Hey guys, tonight, we'll be leaving behind our cozy blankets and soft pillows, stepping away from the warm glow of our familiar bedroom lights, to embark on a journey that's anything but comfortable. Forget about guided tours, snack stops, and reliable Wi-Fi signals, because tonight, you're traveling to a place as unforgiving as it is unforgettable, the Oregon Trail. A land where something as small as a scratch, a shiver from a cold breeze, or a river just a little too deep could mean the end of everything. But before we set off on this dusty road, and before you drift too far into that gentle night, if strange tales like this one spark your curiosity, don't forget to hit like and subscribe. Let me know where you're listening from and what time your clock just ticked. I'd truly love to know. Because even if we're half a world apart, I'm still telling this story just for you. And right now, we're sharing this one quiet moment together. Now then. Turn off your lights. If you've got a fan running, let it hum, it'll become the whisper of prairie winds brushing past the canvas of your wagon. Pull your blanket up a little higher if you tend to get cold, because the night ahead is long. And make no mistake, this journey isn't about comfort. It's about survival. Picture this: the groan of wagon wheels grinding through cracked, sun-baked earth, soil so dry it crumbles like ash beneath your fingers. Swirling into ghostly dust clouds with every step. Overhead, the sky stretches so vast it almost swallows you whole, so wide and deep it makes you feel small in a way you can't quite explain, as if tilting your head just a little too far might send you falling straight into its blue eternity. That sky casts its shadows over wild plains and nameless trails, shining down on sunburnt faces worn thin by exhaustion, faces of people chasing a dream of the West, armed with nothing but stubborn hope and impossible grit. This isn't a vacation. It isn't a retreat. This is the Oregon Trail. A trek spanning more than 2,000 miles, riddled with danger, and marked by hoofprints, wheel ruts, silent tears, and bread so hard you could patch a leaky roof with it. And let me be honest with you, chances are, you're not going to make it all the way. Right now, you are standing at the outer edge of Independence, Missouri. It's the spring of 1843. A gentle breeze rolls across the earth, kicking up fine, pale dust that swirls around your boots and clings to your clothes. Behind you lies the life you've left behind, a house sold for $50 and a fragile thread of hope. The familiar world has faded with a final door slam. And ahead of you stretches the unknown, a land whispered to be rich, green, and free. There are stories of fertile soil waiting for planting and of buffalo that look like monstrous cows with wild eyes and short tempers. None of it feels quite real, but at this point, it doesn't matter whether it's real or not. The decision is made. You've already bought the wagon, scraped together every coin and traded every favor. You've packed your family and your belongings, 3 barrels of flour, 2 jars of pickles, a cast-iron skillet you'll come to both depend on and curse in equal measure. You've watched your neighbors do the same. Everyone seems to be caught in the same current, pulled westward by dreams of land and the quiet promise that maybe, just maybe, life doesn't have to be so hard forever. You haven't heard the words manifest destiny yet, but the dream of owning something no one can take away has already sunk into your bones like marrow. Your wagon stands tall for now, its frame creaking quietly under the strain of everything you own and everything you're afraid to lose. The white canvas arcs above like the ribcage of some long-forgotten beast, catching the light and fluttering slightly as you tighten the ropes. Some have called it a prairie schooner, which sounds poetic. Romantic, even. But you'll feel very differently after 5 nights of sleeping beneath it, your feet damp from dew and a baby wailing at your side while wind rattles the flaps like an angry spirit. You glance over at your oxen, 4 of them, massive and quiet, moving with a heavy, prehistoric rhythm. Their hulking forms seem more suited to building pyramids than dragging your second-hand wooden box full of dried beans and pots across half a continent. You reach out and pat the nearest one's haunch, trying to look like you know what you're doing. It doesn't even notice. Then a voice rings out, clear and loud, wagon trains rolling. And just like that, you're swept into a moving line of wagons, carts, and walking figures that will soon stretch out for miles. Wooden wheels moan and rattle. Pots clang together with every bump in the road. People call out to one another, laughing nervously, adjusting loads, and realizing they may have forgotten socks, or maybe something worse. Dust rises in thick curtains behind the first wheels, a veil you'll be breathing for weeks. You cough, adjust your bonnet or tug your hat tighter to shield your face from the sun. And step forward. The journey has begun. But before we continue, let's pause and acknowledge the sheer absurdity of it all. You're not going to ride in that wagon, not most of the time. You're going to walk. The oxen are there to carry the food, the tools, and the essentials, not people. You will walk for miles every single day, and more often than not, you'll do it barefoot just to spare your shoes. And here's the strange thing, people did this willingly. They weren't forced. They signed up for it. Historians still debate whether this was a sign of immense courage or simply unbearable boredom back home. As your boots crunch along the trail just beyond town, the land seems inviting at first. The road is wide. Wildflowers nod their heads in the breeze beside deep wagon ruts. Birds sing above you in clear voices, untouched by worry. Spirits are high. Children run ahead, laughing and tossing hoops made from barrel rings, sometimes arguing about ridiculous things, like whether buffalo have wings. Someone near the back of the train is already plucking at a fiddle, trying to capture the rhythm of the trail in song. The air smells like warm leather, dusty earth, and a touch of hope, but that hopeful haze doesn't last long. By the third day, reality sets in. A wagon will crack loudly somewhere behind you. A man curses under his breath, turns out he left his hammer all the way back in Ohio. Your oxen are moving slower, their flanks dark with sweat. You hadn't remembered Missouri being quite this hot. A woman with a newborn child is pleading softly for water. Your shirt is soaked through, clinging to your back. The canvas that once looked so crisp and bright now feels like a suffocating heat trap, flapping noisily in every dry gust of wind. Your hands are raw from gripping ropes and rails for hours on end. Blisters bloom along your palms, tender and angry. Soon they'll toughen into calluses. You'll get sunburned, bitten by insects, and discover that roughing it doesn't mean an occasional inconvenience, it means a relentless, aching grind. Some historians argue that this early stretch, from Missouri into Kansas, is the most difficult in terms of morale. The terrain is still forgiving, the landscape mostly green and open. But it's here, in this deceptive calm, that people begin to crack. They start to realize what they've gotten themselves into. The bugs never stop. The walking is endless. Strangers snore at night, and there is no such thing as privacy. Someone breaks an ankle on uneven ground. A baby cries for 2 days without rest. People lower their voices and murmur, maybe we should turn back, as if saying it too loudly might make it come true, but you don't turn back. Not yet. By now, you've started to learn the rhythm of trail life. Mornings start before the sun rises, the darkness broken only by the flicker of small fires and the sharp scent of burning wood. The air is filled with the sound of metal kettles heating over flames and the heavy shuffle of boots hitting dirt. People groan, stretch, and grumble about eating beans for breakfast again. The meal is quick and uninspiring, hardtack that cracks your teeth or cornmeal mush that tastes like soggy cardboard. Then it's time to move again. You walk alongside your wagon, nudging the oxen forward and scanning the road. Some ruts run 6 inches deep, carved in by hundreds of wagons before you. At times, the trail splits without warning, and you might follow the wrong fork for hours before realizing it circles back, if you're lucky. There are no signs, no rest stops, no friendly gas stations or roadside maps. Just the occasional rock with a name carved in, a lonely monument to someone who passed this way before and maybe didn't make it. Every few hours, the entire train halts to let the animals rest. You drop into whatever shade you can find, swatting at flies and gulping water that tastes faintly of metal. Napping is dangerous, too deep a sleep and your wagon could be gone when you wake up. Evenings are quieter, softer. Campfires begin to glow across the prairie like scattered stars. People gather to share stories. A man named Jed pulls out a fiddle again. Someone hums along, off-key but heartfelt, and no one minds. Dinner is simple, boiled beans, maybe a bit of bacon if you're lucky. No one complains. They're too exhausted. You wrap yourself in a blanket, settle on the hard earth, and stare up at stars so bright and close you feel like you could brush them with your fingertips. The land feels enormous, and yet somehow close, like it's listening. At night, coyotes howl in the distance. Sometimes the wind picks up and tears across the plains, whipping through the wagons and shaking the canvas like it's trying to tear it free. Children cry and cling to their parents. Grown men keep rifles within reach, just in case. You lie awake, trying not to think about what might be out there, watching from the blackness beyond the firelight, and yet, there is beauty here too. The sunsets seem to last forever, fading into shades of purple and orange you've never seen before. The scent of grass after a light rain is so fresh it feels sacred. Out here, you start to notice things you'd never paid attention to before. How the wind changes just before a storm, how certain birds gather near water, how even silence can feel like companionship. Still, the doubts begin to sneak in. Will your oxen hold up? Will your food supply carry you to the end? Is this entire journey one massive, irreversible mistake? By the 10th day, your legs ache with every step. Your fingernails are lined with dirt that won't wash out. You've started talking to your wagon as if it's a fellow traveler. Maybe it is. At least it hasn't left you behind. You name your oxen, hoping it brings luck. There's old Grumble, the grouchy one. Biscuit, who never stops drooling. Mudfoot, the clumsy one. And Susan, sweet, steady Susan, who, unlike the others, seems to pay attention when you talk. You've only covered a small fraction of the trail, a few hundred miles into an impossible road that seems to stretch into forever, but you're still walking. Still moving forward, and out here, in this wild nowhere, that's what matters most. Your wagon creaks again, that same persistent creak, rhythmic and wooden, as if the old boards have finally developed a voice of their own. It's no longer just background noise, it's part of your day now. You're learning to recognize each subtle sound for what it is. The clatter of a loose iron bracket that rattles every time the wheel hits a rut. The dull, hollow thud of a barrel shifting ever so slightly out of place. The uneven patter of a wooden spoon bouncing around inside a crate, forgotten and untied. All these sounds blend together into something almost musical. Not the kind of tune you'd dance to, not anything you'd ever willingly download or hum at a party, but still, it's a strange sort of frontier symphony. And somehow, you catch yourself humming along to its offbeat rhythm. Now that you've finally left the edge of civilization behind and are out on the open trail, it's time to confront your very first major misstep. Packing. You thought you were being smart. You thought you had this figured out. You brought all the essentials, or so you believed. There's food, clothing, a modest supply of medical necessities, a handful of tools, and of course, a few sentimental objects to keep you grounded. And then, because there seemed to be just enough space left, you added a couple of porcelain plates. Decorative. Fancy. Completely useless by tomorrow. It turns out overpacking is not just a common mistake. It's practically a rite of passage on this trail. Within days of leaving Missouri, you begin to pass what could only be described as a trailside junkyard. Scattered across the dusty road is the fallout of poor decisions and too much optimism, cast iron stoves sitting abandoned under the sun, carved bookcases slowly tipping into the brush, upholstered chairs that once sat proudly in parlors, and yes, even a few pianos, their keys warped by heat, their music forever silenced. Some poor soul truly thought they'd be serenading coyotes at dusk. It starts to dawn on you that the heaviest part of the load isn't what's inside the wagon. It's the choices you made. You brought 12 pounds of bacon. That, at least, was wise. But you also brought a spinning wheel you've never used, a sack of dried apples already fermenting in the heat, and, for reasons you can no longer explain, an entire chest of books. Books. As though you'll have spare afternoons to lounge and read while dodging mosquitoes, hauling firewood, or fixing broken wheels with greasy hands. The bacon, though, that stays, it is, undeniably, your best friend now. Salty, greasy, durable. It keeps well, so long as you can protect it from moisture and sun, which is a challenge given that nothing in this part of the world seems to stay dry or cool for very long. Still, when it works, it transforms you into something of a trail gourmet. You slice it thin, lay it on a dented iron pan over a fire fueled by cow chips, and suddenly, you're a 5-star frontier chef. Add beans to the mix. That's a meal. Add flour. A miracle. Add nothing at all. It's still bacon, and that's good enough. You begin guarding that bacon like it's your own personal fortune. And on this trail, it kind of is. It holds real, tangible value. You could probably trade a few crispy strips for something useful, a rifle cartridge, a serviceable pair of boots, or even a little kindness from someone who has nothing left to offer. Once, you watched a man trade 2 whole pounds of bacon for a cowbell. It didn't even ring properly. Still, try not to fall in love with it. You'll grow to resent that bacon sooner than you think. Within a month, it will feel less like a treat and more like a greasy obligation. Pioneers dreamed about bacon the way astronauts might dream about toothpaste, necessary, always available, but utterly joyless after the novelty wears off. There are historians who still debate whether the obsession with bacon was a matter of practical survival or a form of psychological escape. Maybe it was both. Either way, you're sitting by the fire, chewing on something that's more salt than meat, and convincing yourself it tastes like the home you left behind. Trail food in general is a daily lesson in adjusting expectations. You begin the journey with what feels like plenty: sacks of flour, dry beans, rice, salt, and if luck smiled on you, a bit of sugar and maybe even a stash of coffee. But nothing lasts. Flour gets buggy. Beans stay hard no matter how long you boil them. Coffee disappears like a ghost. And salt? Salt becomes an obsession. You start whispering about it like it's gold dust. Some people admit to dreaming about salted pork. Others just dream of bread that doesn't disintegrate like crumbled chalk. Then there's the matter of water. You assumed you'd have water. This land is full of rivers, right? There must be creeks and springs and trickling streams with names like something out of a folk song, and yes, those exist. In storybooks. Out here, water is often little more than a stagnant puddle, one that has already been visited by 30 oxen, a half-dozen mules, and a goose that no one has the heart, or courage, to eat. You strain that puddle water through a rag. You boil it for as long as the firewood allows. And then, you try to drink it without retching. It tastes like mud mixed with heat and something far worse. On the worst days, the water is so alkaline it dries your mouth more than it quenches it, leaving your tongue feeling like it was scraped with sandstone. Some journals from the time mention an unusual trick: people burning bread into charcoal and dropping the ashes into water to improve the flavor. Burnt toast, used as a water flavoring. That's how far the trail will take you. You'll find yourself burning bread on purpose and drinking its memory. Meal prep becomes an exercise in endurance. You boil everything until the colors fade to a pale gray and try not to think about what's floating in the pot. If you discover a weevil crawling through your flour, well, it's just protein. That's the joke. No one laughs when they say it, but no one disputes it either. Lunch, when it happens at all, is often eaten standing up, one hand holding a cracked biscuit, the other hand keeping you balanced against the side of a wagon. The biscuit crumbles. You shrug. You eat the crumbs. The rule is simple: if it doesn't have legs or a stinger, it's probably fair game. Over time, you start noticing the small acts of innovation among your fellow travelers. A woman named Lydia figures out how to bake cornbread in a skillet buried under hot ashes. A boy named Eli insists on adding wild onions to every dish, a tiny rebellion against the monotony. Someone else packed vinegar and is suddenly the most popular person in camp. Food becomes more than nourishment. It is survival, plain and simple. If your supplies run out, you don't just go hungry. You face the real possibility of dying. There is no store beyond the horizon. No hidden pantry in the woods. Just more dust, more fatigue, and maybe a squirrel that's quicker than you'll ever be. And then there's the matter of stuff. All the things you thought mattered start to weigh differently now. That rocking chair your mother rocked you in. Left behind on a hill, sacrificed to save the oxen, the extra will you swore you'd need? Splintered. Useless. Abandoned, the washboard passed down from your grandmother. Tossed into the fire one bitter night, these sacrifices begin slowly, almost reluctantly. At first, you still hesitate, still feel the tug of sentiment. But by the second week, something changes. You become more ruthless. You pitch a lantern that once lit your porch. You smash a crate of empty jars. You stop asking if something has value and start asking if it weighs more than it's worth. There's an old joke passed around the camps. If someone says, "You pack like you think you're coming back," no one says it a second time. This is not a vacation. This trail is not a round trip. It's a one-way gamble, a forward-only kind of dream. Every pound you haul is one more chance your axle gives out, one more risk that your oxen stumble and don't get back up, and yet, you keep a few things. You can't help it: a pocket Bible. A patchwork quilt from your mother's hands. A spoon with your name carved into the handle. These things are not practical. But they endure, because they are the last remaining ties to a world that is fading fast. They remind you of tables and chairs and quiet dinners under roofs that did not leak. They remind you that soup used to have flavor, and the broth wasn't made from bark and hope. Out here, value is slippery. What was once treasure becomes trade. Gold rings exchanged for loaves of bread. Silver combs traded for whiskey. A boy gave away his wooden flute for a wide-brimmed hat after nearly collapsing from sunstroke. You begin to believe that someone would genuinely cry over a single jar of pickles. Trading becomes an event. At riverbanks, makeshift camps, or wherever the wagons gather long enough to exchange breath, people swap like merchants in a dusty market. A woman offers wool socks for a box of matches. A man trades lye soap for a bent tin cup. There are rumors too. Someone's cousin made it all the way to Oregon with just dried meat and grit. Someone else swears the mountains are already covered in snow. Truth and fiction blend together here. On the trail, rumor is as powerful as currency and just as unreliable. Some travelers keep odd collections. One man hoards feathers. A woman gently presses prairie wildflowers into the pages of a hymnal whose spine barely holds together. These habits seem strange at first, but eventually you understand. These aren't hobbies. They are survival strategies of the mind. When your body is stretched to breaking, the soul looks for small beauties to cling to. Remember the bacon you loved? You start to hate it now. You dream of apples. Real apples. Crisp, juicy, even sour ones. You trade your last biscuit, maybe your boots, for a single apple that doesn't smell like dust and regret. By the time this leg of the journey draws to a close, you've learned more about weight than most people ever will. Not just the kind you can measure, but the kind that lingers in your chest. The burden of choice. The sting of waste. The quiet bond you form with the objects that still remain. Your wagon is lighter now. Your legs are stronger. Your hunger duller. The dust still clings to everything. You still fantasize about baths that don't involve freezing rivers, but you keep walking. Because you have to, and even you know the bacon wouldn't survive the trip back. The trail bends, as it always does, towards some vague horizon you will never quite reach. You wake early today, before the sun has properly risen, with your legs sore, your fingers stiff, and your eyes still crusted from sleep. Even before you sit up, you can already taste the dust. It hangs in the air like a warning, dry and unrelenting. This is not the kind of dust that evokes romantic tales of the open West. This is the kind that stings your throat, settles into your gums, and turns your tongue to sandpaper. It is the flavor of exhaustion, kicked up by 30 wagons and more than 100 hooves. It sifts down onto your blankets and into your sleeves. It coats your teeth with a gritty film that reminds you constantly that you are nowhere near anything resembling home. Today is river crossing day. You did not really plan for this part. Not properly. Maybe you thought it would be simple. Just cross the river and move on. Maybe you imagined something like a shallow stream, the kind you could splash across barefoot, laughing, maybe even pausing to rinse your face or take a sip. That version of events belonged to a painting, not reality. Because out here, river crossings are not scenic detours. They are full-body trials. They are moments that separate memory from myth. They are wet, chaotic, ox-panicking disasters that force you to hold your breath longer than you thought possible and pray to every god you have ever heard of. You reach the edge of the Big Blue River. Or maybe it is the Kansas River. By now, the names blur together in your mind. What matters more is what you see, a wide, fast current that seems to pulse with warning. The water glints under the morning sun, looking deeper than it should. The banks on either side are steep, slick with mud, and crowded with people shouting instructions, asking questions, panicking, praying. The noise rises and falls like a tide of its own. Some families choose to ford it directly, leading their oxen into the shallows first and hoping the wagons will follow without tipping. It is a test of weight, of balance, of nerve. Others are attempting to caulk their wagons, smearing the seams with pitch, wrapping the undersides in canvas, and transforming wood and metal into something that resembles a boat only in theory. You watch these makeshift vessels and feel your chest tighten. The current pulls harder than expected. The water has no mercy. You stare at the river and realize something you hadn't truly admitted to yourself until now. You do not know how to swim. Historians still debate whether caulking wagons actually worked or if it was just a slow, collective march toward disaster. Regardless, this is your plan. You have no better one. You strip down to your base layers. You remove everything unnecessary. You lift the sacks of flour above your head and tie them down. You tuck anything valuable into waxed bags and wedge them high inside the wagon. Then you stand beside the oxen, hands trembling, breath shallow, heart loud in your ears. The oxen move first. Their hooves splash into the river with hesitation. The water is shockingly cold. Not crisp, not refreshing, biting. It feels like it wants to reach inside you and chill your bones from the inside out. It soaks through your boots and climbs up your legs, winding its way around your spine until every muscle tightens. The wagon lurches behind you as the front wheels dip into the current. The back wheels hesitate on the bank, then slide in, and suddenly you are no longer in control of anything. The oxen grunt and surge forward. One stumbles. A voice cries out nearby. A barrel breaks loose and begins bobbing away, spinning slowly. You think you see someone's bonnet float past. Somewhere, a baby begins wailing, the sound raw and animal and afraid. You do not panic. You do not have time. You are gripping the side of the wagon, wading deeper and deeper, chest deep now, your clothes dragging heavily. The river wants to pull everything away from you. It tugs at the wheels, pushes at your legs, demands surrender. You shout. Someone else shouts back. Maybe it's your name. Maybe it's a warning. You do not know. You are too focused on staying upright, and then, somehow, your wagon reaches the other side. Not entirely upright. Not entirely intact. But there it is. The front wheels catch in thick mud. The oxen grunt again, nostrils flaring. Two men with ropes wade in to help. They heave and strain and pull until the wagon finally lurches up onto solid ground. You collapse onto your knees and cough out a mouthful of brown water. Your boots squelch. Your arms ache. You take a slow inventory, 1 pan missing, 3 spoons gone, but your flour is dry. You will survive. Others are not so fortunate. By nightfall, 2 wagons are gone. Dragged down. Smashed against rocks. A boy is dead, pulled under before anyone could reach him. A cow is missing, probably wandering somewhere downstream, grazing its way across what might be Nebraska. Around the fire that night, the mood is different. There is no chatter, no laughter. Only the sound of wet clothes being wrung out and supplies being counted. A woman kneels quietly, pressing her husband's coat dry with trembling hands. A man sits cross-legged in the dirt, cursing gently under his breath over a bag of sugar that turned to sludge. Someone mumbles something about taking the bridge next time. No one even bothers to laugh. There is no bridge. You begin to measure your journey not by miles, but by rivers. There is before the Platte and after the Platte. Before the Snake and after the Columbia. Each river crossing is a scar, a watermark in memory. Some are kind, with shallow banks and slow water. Others are cruel, filled with icy melt and hidden boulders. You approach each one like a battlefield, already bracing for loss. There is an old warning, carved into a stone near one crossing point: hell is crossing the river. You laugh the first time you read it. Later, you wonder if the person who carved it was already drowning when they wrote it. With time, you pick up tricks. You learn to read the oxen, the way they hesitate when the riverbed is too soft. The way their shoulders stiffen before slipping. You prod the bottom with sticks. You seal barrels tighter. You lash your gear down more carefully. You start to sense, without needing to ask, whether the water is too fast or the mud too thick. But experience does not equal safety. It only gives you smaller odds of disaster, and you are always racing time. Waiting for water to recede means losing your place among the other wagons. Falling behind means fewer fires, fewer voices, fewer hands to help if something goes wrong. It also means risking a worse fate, reaching the mountains too late. When the passes are snowed over and mercy is measured in degrees below freezing, the campfire becomes a place for stories. Even on wet nights. Someone swears her grandmother tied live chickens beneath the wagon and listened for their clucking to detect danger. Another traveler claims he saw a dog ride a floating crate all the way to the next camp, dry as kindling. These tales are strange, probably false, but necessary. They soften the truth. They give the brain something to do besides remember what the river tried to take. You start inventing your own rituals. Maybe you toss a coin into the current. Maybe you sing a line of a hymn. Maybe you close your eyes and pretend you are somewhere else until your boots find dry ground again. Rituals don't need to make sense. They just need to keep you sane. Not every crossing is a river. Sometimes the danger is quicksand. Sometimes it is a bog, where every step sinks. Sometimes the ground itself is so soaked and heavy that it swallows wagons whole. One morning, you pass a wheel sticking up from the mud like a warning sign. There is no one around. No one mentions it. You remember that bacon. The one you saved like treasure. It is soaked now. Damp and curling like old paper. You try to dry it by the fire, but it never quite recovers. Still, you eat it. Of course you do. You have to. It tastes like riverbank and regret. You try not to think about what may have been upstream. As a side note, clothes on the trail are never dry. Not truly. Even in sunshine, even when the wind is strong, everything you own ends up damp, heavy, and stiff. Your sleeves grow mildew. Your boots rot from the inside. Shirts take on new colors, mostly shades of brown. Socks become sacred objects. You turn them inside out, stitch holes with thread, and wear them until they give up entirely. And when they do, you mourn them like old friends, but you keep going. You haul people out of the muck. You help build makeshift rafts. You dig out wheels with sticks and your bare hands. You stop fearing the river and start respecting it. It has no memory, no mercy, but it has rules. You learn them. Or you drown, when the sun comes out and the trail evens out again, when your shoulders dry and your heartbeat slows and you can smell something other than mud and smoke, you feel something you did not expect, pride. Not the loud kind. Not the kind that demands applause. Just a quiet, solid sense of having survived. You crossed. You are wet, dirty, cold, tired, but you are alive. You did not drown. You did not lose everything, and this is what survival looks like here. Not victory. Not glory, just one more day behind you, just one more night beneath the stars, coughing up river silt and staring at the sky through smoke and cloud, knowing tomorrow, the trail bends again. You wake to the sound of coughing. Not your own, this time. It's someone nearby, hacking and retching like their lungs are filled with dust, and to be fair, they probably are. You sit up slowly, back groaning in protest, every joint and muscle stiff from the cold ground and the long days. You rub your eyes, blink a few times, and take in the view that has become all too familiar. It's the same one you've had each morning for what feels like an eternity, wagon wheels crusted with a mixture of dried mud and prairie dust, clothes fluttering in the breeze like tattered ghost flags strung between the spokes, and the trail itself stretching ahead in an unbroken, unwavering line that seems to vanish into the horizon. You're somewhere in the Great Plains now. Or maybe you've just come out of them. It's hard to tell. Time and geography begin to slip past you like smoke through your fingers. The landscape doesn't offer much help. It's one massive, breathing sameness, an ocean of golden grasses that sways in long, lazy waves. Trees are rare. Shade is a luxury. The horizon just keeps going, and while it's beautiful at first, the beauty begins to feel eerie, almost oppressive. There's something terrifying about how nothing ever changes, and then there are the ruts. No one prepared you for just how deeply the Oregon Trail would be carved into the land. It's not a single trail but a network of scars. Pressed into the earth by generations of wagon wheels, iron rims, and desperate decisions. Some ruts are so deeply cut that your axle would snap clean in two if you strayed into them. Others are shallow, barely there, like fading footprints, so faint you wonder if anyone who made them got past this point at all. These wheel ruts feel like the ghost handwriting of the westward dream. Each one is a fossil left behind by people who, like you, were chasing something they couldn't quite name. They are monuments to ambition, to exhaustion, to the hope that somewhere out there, a better life waited. The ruts run for miles, twin lines etched into the soil, often in parallel, sometimes veering wildly off course, crisscrossing like the land itself is trying to remember every footstep, every failure, every prayer whispered through chapped lips. You learn quickly that following the wrong rut can throw your whole day into chaos. 1 minute you're rolling smoothly. The next, your wheel drops into a trench too narrow, too soft, and suddenly the wagon lurches like it wants to quit. You curse under your breath. The oxen heave a deep, world-weary sigh, the kind that makes you think they've seen this mistake 100 times before and know exactly how it ends. There are no signs to guide you out here. No GPS to chirp a correction. No clear landmarks. Just rumors, fading instincts, and the occasional tree that looks so battered, so miserable, that it becomes a landmark out of pity. Turn left at the sad tree, someone might say. Everyone nods like that makes perfect sense, because out here, it does, but as the ruts deepen, so does something else. Sickness begins to whisper through the camp, at first. It's easy to dismiss. A few coughs. A bout of fatigue. People blame the dust, the unrelenting sun, the brackish river water. You laugh it off. Everyone does. It's nothing, just part of the journey. Then someone finally says the word no one wanted to hear, cholera. It doesn't sneak in politely. It doesn't warn you. It arrives like a thunderclap, sudden and cruel. 1 minute, someone is sitting by the fire, complaining about the blisters on their heels or laughing at a joke told for the 10th time. The next, they're pale as ash, shaking, doubled over in pain. And then they're gone. Just like that. There's no time to grieve the way you want to. You wrap the body tightly in a blanket. You search for earth soft enough to dig, which isn't saying much in this hard-packed prairie. You work quickly, silently. The oxen are already moving. The trail does not pause for sorrow. And neither does death. Historians still debate what caused the worst outbreaks, whether it was the near-constant exposure to human and animal waste, or the rivers that carried more than just water downstream. The truth is, both were to blame. You drink from the same sources where oxen cool their legs and people dump what they no longer need. You try to boil what you can, try to filter out the worst, but eventually thirst always wins. When your lips crack and your throat burns, when the sun beats down so hard it feels like your brain is cooking inside your skull, you drink. You drink anyway. Folk remedies start to make the rounds. Someone insists that dropping a lump of charcoal into a water barrel will purify it. Others suck on copper coins. A man in a tattered coat swears by his morning ration of whiskey, says he's never been sick a day in his life. No one's sure if it's true, or if he's simply too drunk to notice. You do what you can. You pray. You check your children's foreheads for heat each morning. You smell everything before you eat or drink. You conserve vinegar. You steer clear of that one man whose cough seems to grow worse by the hour. Though he pretends it's nothing, and still, you walk. Meanwhile, the maps grow increasingly useless. If you can even call them maps. They look more like half-remembered sketches on scraps of paper. Rivers are drawn like straight blue lines. Mountains like neat little triangles. Nothing is to scale. The names are wrong. The details are missing. One of your maps insists there's a fort nearby, but when you get there, it's just a pile of rocks and disappointment. Another promises a shortcut that leads you straight into mosquito-infested bogs. So you rely on word of mouth, which is like leaning on a crutch made of smoke. One traveler says turn right at a dry creek. Another swears there's water in the hills. You learn quickly that directions out here are as fragile as memory, and twice as dangerous. Eventually, you reach a place with a rock that people call Independence Rock. It looms out of the plains like a ship run aground, and its surface is covered in names. Dozens, maybe hundreds of them, all scratched into stone by hands like yours. It's a halfway point. A promise made in granite. A place where people stop, breathe, and remind themselves they're still here. You trace a few of the old initials, running your fingertips over them like the lines of a palm. Some have faded already, worn down by time and wind. They feel like ancestors you never met. And then you carve your own name. Just your first. Just in case, around this time, the monotony sets in like a new kind of ache. You begin to measure the hours not by shadows, but by the number of times your thoughts circle the same loop. You count your steps. You count the days. You count how many teeth are still left in your comb. You play games just to stay sane. How many clouds look like goats? How many times has Jed told that same story about the fiddle? How long can you stay silent before anyone notices? people start to crack in quiet, strange ways. A woman hums the same melody over and over like a lullaby only she understands. A man insists on eating only beans, but only if they're arranged in a circle. A child becomes fixated on rocks, not for skipping, just for holding, for naming, for whispering secrets to. You wonder if it's quirky, or if it's the first sign of something breaking loose inside them. It's hard to say anymore. You try to make conversation. But even stories start to feel tired. Someone finally admits they missed the sound of a clock ticking. Not to tell time. Just to remind them that time still exists, that something in this world runs on rules. You begin to understand why some called this place the Great Nothing. A landscape so wide, so blank, so unchanging that it strips you down to your instincts. You lose track of who you were. All that remains is motion. And the need to keep moving. Nature tries to soften the blow. You catch glimpses of prairie dogs, jittery little creatures that duck in and out of their burrows like they're playing hide-and-seek with the sky. You watch the grasses ripple like green waves across a wind-tossed ocean. You gather flowers with strange names, scarlet globe mallow, woolly plantain, bitterroot, and press them gently between the thin pages of your Bible. Not for beauty. Not for sentiment. For proof. That something still grows here. That the land has not forgotten how to bloom. One night, beneath a sky so vast it feels like it might swallow you whole, you hear the familiar pattern, a cough, a wheeze, and then the silence that follows. Someone else is gone, there's no ceremony. Just a small wooden cross placed in ground barely soft enough to hold it. Maybe someone mutters a prayer. Maybe not. Maybe there's just a nod, a glance, and the quiet resolve to keep walking. You begin to wonder how many of these makeshift graves are out here. How many lie hidden beneath the sagebrush? How many names were never carved into any rock, never recorded in any book? How many children sleep beneath wildflowers, their stories unfinished? Still, your boots find their way back into the ruts. The wagon creaks. The oxen lean forward into the wind. You keep walking. You follow the tracks carved by those who came before you, fully aware that not all of them made it to the end, and you whisper to yourself, like a promise, like a chant, like a lifeline in the dust, you will. The morning starts with hunger. Not the polite kind, not the sort of hunger that whispers, I could go for breakfast, but the deeper kind. The slow, gnawing, hollow ache that makes your belly feel like an empty drum, stretched too tight and echoing with every step you take. It hums while you walk, a low vibration that stays just under the surface. It tightens when you sit still, curls in on itself when you try to rest, and it fills the quiet spaces between your thoughts like smoke. You're not starving. At least, not yet. But food is running low. And now, you're starting to really notice it. You notice how often you think about meals. You start dreaming of them, vivid, maddening dreams. You count the biscuits left in the tin, count them again, then recount them, just in case. You argue about the last pinch of sugar like it's gold dust. You find yourself remembering apples again, but this time they're warm and soft and buttery. Baked with cinnamon. Bubbled at the edges. Dripping down a spoon you licked clean in a kitchen that feels impossibly far away. You would trade nearly anything just to taste that spoon again. What's left in the wagon is humble. And it gets humbler by the day. You've got beans, maybe. A little cornmeal. A bag of flour that smells like it's thinking about turning. A sack of dried peas that everyone quietly avoids because they take 4 hours to soften and still manage to taste like disappointment. Like chalk and regret, and bacon. Or what passes for it now. It's shrinking slice by slice. You ration it carefully, carve it thinner each morning. You convince yourself it still counts as meat, even when it's just a ribbon of memory. A salty ghost on the edge of the pan, so, you do what pioneers have always done when supplies begin to vanish, you hunt, or at least, you try. Hunting on the Oregon Trail is not what the paintings promised. There are no graceful stags bounding through lush woods. There are no bold shots fired in cinematic glory. There are no proud returns with wild game slung over shoulders. It's mostly waiting. And missing. It's crouching in grass, knees aching, rifle in hand, heart in throat. It's spotting something too far to aim at. It's firing and hearing nothing but the startled rustle of something you didn't hit. Sometimes the rifle jams. Sometimes your hand shakes. Sometimes there's simply nothing there. The animals have seen your kind before. They know what comes with the creak of wagons and the scent of desperation. You trail a rabbit for 20 long minutes. It leads you across rocks, behind brush, almost into a stream. And then it vanishes. Just like that. Gone, like a magician's trick. You see birds that scatter before you can raise your rifle. You once spot a deer, but it's already fleeing, just a blur of muscle and hooves. Once, you get lucky. You throw a rock and hit a squirrel. It's small, and the moment it falls, you freeze. Not from sadness, but from relief. You're so proud of that squirrel, you almost cry. You don't, of course. But only because someone is watching. You roast it over the fire like a banquet. The meat is gamey. The bones snap like twigs. It feeds 3 people. Barely. Still, it's warm. Still, it's real. Historians still debate whether most emigrants got more sustenance from hunting or from trading with native tribes. The truth lies somewhere in the middle. Some days you catch something. Some days you trade. Some days you go without and call it fasting to save face. And on some days, when your stomach growls louder than your boots crunching on gravel, you just pray for a miracle. One of those days arrives when someone whispers a word along the line of wagons. A single word that makes heads turn and hearts leap. Buffalo. Everything changes. The first time you see them, they don't seem real. They look like moving boulders, shaggy and hulking and dark against the sun-bleached horizon. They move with weight, with force, like thunder you can feel in your chest. A herd of massive, breathing earth. They stretch so far across the plains that your eyes lose count. They look ancient. Primeval. Like something the early prophets might have described. And they smell of dust, sweat, musk, and unfiltered wilderness. You have never seen that much meat in one place before. Not in markets. Not in dreams. The men grip their rifles. The women hold tight to hope. Someone starts shouting orders. You prepare for the hunt. What follows is not orderly. It is chaos. Pure, wild chaos, shots fired in every direction. Screams and yells. Dust clouds thick enough to choke a man. The buffalo are not the ones screaming. The people are. Wagons tip. People stumble. Someone nearly gets trampled. Your own rifle jams again. You fix it, but by the time it's ready, the herd has fled. A rising cloud of dust, hooves pounding toward the horizon, but this time, you're lucky. Someone brought one down, a large one. Its body lies motionless, the ground around it torn up by the panic. Steam still rises from the wound. Children gather to stare. Men grab their knives. Women begin sorting cloths and buckets. The work begins. Buffalo butchering is not a clean task. It is not easy. There is blood. There is fat that clings to skin and sleeves. There are bones that crack and sinew that stretches. But there is also meat. More than you have seen in weeks. Enough to feed every wagon and still leave something to store. You cook it slowly, carefully. You dry it into strips. You store what you can in cloth, in hide, in anything that will keep it safe from flies. You eat until you're full. Then you eat a little more, just because you can. for the first time in what feels like ages, your stomach is quiet. Still, days like that are rare. Most days are lean. A lizard on a rock. A bird in the brush. One evening, someone bakes a kind of pie from wild berries and calls it miracle stew. It's sour, mostly burnt, and causes a few upset stomachs. But for one brief evening, people smile and call it a miracle anyway. You try your hand at fishing, half-heartedly. One man ties a string to his toe and naps beside the river. It works once. Another makes a net from shirt sleeves and catches only disappointment. And mosquitoes, eventually, someone invents something called trail stew. It becomes a catch-all. Bits of salt pork. Biscuit crumbs. Boiled greens that no one can name. A flower or two. Anything edible goes in the pot. It sounds charming. It isn't. But it fills the bowl. You eat it. You get up. You keep moving. Around this time, your relationship with food starts to change. It stops being about taste. It isn't about comfort. It's not even about feeling full. It becomes about survival. About function. Every bite you take is an act of endurance. An answer to hunger. A small defiance against the trail, against the cold, against the weariness creeping into your bones. That doesn't mean you stop dreaming. One night, lying in your bedroll with your hands behind your head, you close your eyes and let your mind drift. It drifts to a table. A real table. Clean linens. Shiny forks. A roast glistening in the center. Potatoes. Warm rolls. Something green that doesn't taste bitter. And then dessert. A peach pie. Cool and golden. Sweet and thick. You see the slice lifted to your lips. You taste it. You bite your lip in your sleep. You wake up chewing nothing. Later that day, you gnaw on a piece of jerky so tough it could double as boot leather. You laugh to yourself. Sometimes, laughter is the only seasoning you have left. You begin to learn from the land. Wild onions. Prickly pears. Mushrooms, but only if someone is sure they're safe. You always ask twice. You remember the man who thought he found parsley. It wasn't. He was sick for days. Some of the women boil sagebrush into tea. Others steep pine needles and swear by the taste. One afternoon, a child proudly hands out candy dug from the dirt. It's tree sap. Sticky. Sour. Weirdly comforting. You take a piece. It clings to your teeth for the rest of the afternoon. Meals grow stranger. Out of need, not choice. Snake meat. Roasted crickets. Stewed lizard tails. At some point, you hear yourself say, "Could use more salt," while chewing a grasshopper. And somehow, that feels normal now. You don't talk about it. You just chew. And hope, eventually, you stop missing variety. Not because you've lost your sense of taste, but because your mind adjusts. Beans become familiar. Hardtack becomes something to expect. Bacon, when you have it, is almost holy. You also stop eating as a group on some days. Not out of anger. Just practicality. Someone's ill. Someone else cannot stand the stew again. A child refuses to eat unless the food is arranged a certain way. You stop questioning it. You adapt. You do what works. Every calorie is a small victory, and still, you walk through hunger. Through fields that give nothing back. Past streams that trickle instead of flow. You walk while chewing, while swallowing, while praying for anything to ease the ache. You walk with your eyes on the horizon and a hand on your stomach, because this trail will not wait, and neither will your hunger. Somewhere around the third week, or maybe it's the fifth, you're not exactly sure anymore, since the days have all begun to blur together, you come to a realization that nobody really prepared you for: boredom hurts. Not in a vague, emotional way. Not like a passing feeling or an idle sigh. It actually hurts. Deeply. Physically. Like a dull, invisible pressure that sinks into your bones and settles behind your eyes. It starts in your shoulders, creeps slowly down your back, and clings to your spine like a wet cloak. It pulls at your legs, drags behind your heels like a sack full of invisible bricks, and makes every step feel heavier than the last. You always thought the Oregon Trail would be full of excitement. Filled with dramatic obstacles and moments of heart-pounding tension. And yes, those moments exist. There are thrills. There are dangers. There are sights that steal your breath. But in between those, there is a vast, aching stretch of emptiness. You march for what feels like eternity through landscapes so monotonous, so unchanged, that they begin to feel like a personal insult. The plains stretch endlessly in every direction, flat and featureless and stubbornly the same. The sky hangs above you, wide and offensively blue, without a single cloud to interrupt its perfection. The grass grows too tall, swaying in a way that feels mocking. The path never curves, never surprises. It simply continues. Straight ahead. Always forward. Never sideways. Never back. It begins to wear on your mind. The silence here is not like the peaceful hush of a quiet morning in town. It's not like the cozy quiet of a winter night. No. This silence is something else. It is long and stretched thin like an old rope, pulling tight across your thoughts and daring you to notice it. The only sounds that break it are repetitive and predictable: the steady creak of wagon wheels, the occasional grunt of oxen, and the whisper of wind moving through grass. If someone drops a tin cup, everyone flinches. It's the most eventful thing that's happened in hours. You start to count things. At first, it's steps. Hundreds. Thousands. Then you count wagon spokes. Then clouds. Then birds that vanish into the sky too quickly. You count the number of times you see the same bent tree, which probably isn't the same one at all, but it might as well be. You even count how often Jed the fiddler tells that same tale about the snake that slithered into his boot while he slept. So far, he's told it 9 times. Maybe 10. You've stopped correcting him. Some of the travelers turn to journaling. Others try sketching the landscape, even though it hasn't changed in days. A few embroider to pass the time. That sounds more refined than it is. Really, it's just repetitive stitching of tiny little excess into rough cloth, forming shapes that barely resemble flowers or initials. You try singing once. You get through the 50th verse of "Oh, Susanna" before someone begs you to stop. Another person tries singing a harmony. It goes badly. Then, someone starts carving a spoon out of an animal bone. It's surprisingly impressive. A small work of art made from boredom and necessity. Inspired, you begin collecting rocks. Not valuable ones. Just ones that catch your eye. One looks like a potato. Another resembles a human nose. You keep them in your pocket. You give them names. Occasionally, you speak to them. Not full conversations. Just a word here and there. Nothing to worry about, probably. Historians still debate whether it was boredom, not hardship, that did the most damage on the trail. There is scattered evidence suggesting that the tedium broke people more deeply than thirst or hunger. Journal entries become incoherent. Arguments begin over trivial things like the arrangement of soup bowls or the angle of a tent flap. In one case, a man reportedly walked away from his wagon in the middle of a conversation. He never came back. In another, a family played the same hand of cards for 4 full days, refusing to reshuffle out of sheer stubbornness or maybe desperation. These are not myths. These are fragments left behind in journals, margins of maps, and fading memory. To fight the creeping madness, people invent games. One ties a feather to a string and tries to catch it on the breeze. A girl attempts to walk the length of the path while balancing a spoon on her nose. It becomes a contest. She wins, again and again. Eventually, no one wants to challenge her anymore. There is always music. Jed plays his fiddle at night, near the fire, and you begin to understand why everyone forgives his endless boot snake story. He can pull beauty out of those strings, coaxing soft, crooked melodies that echo the trail itself. Melancholy. Lopsided. Hopeful and tired at the same time, every now and then, something interrupts the monotony. A sudden storm, dark and theatrical, charges over the horizon. Lightning slices the sky like glass shattering in slow motion. Or wildlife appears. Antelope darting in the distance. An owl perched solemnly on a broken stump. A prairie dog popping up with a look of severe judgment. Each sighting is a treasure. You also tell stories. By now, the people in your wagon train know each other's secrets. You've heard about Martha's cousin who married her piano teacher. You know David once chased a chicken for 3 hours and failed. Someone confesses they missed the scent of shoe polish. You understand. Everyone misses something strange. You, for instance, miss chairs, not just sitting, but chairs themselves. With wooden backs. With legs. With purpose. With pride. You dream of chairs the way others dream of distant lovers. One night, you describe a rocking chair with such longing, such vivid passion, that the person listening begins to cry. That same night, you laugh so uncontrollably at a joke about oxen flatulence that you nearly choke on your piece of dry cornbread. The trail strips things from you. Bit by bit. Your sense of time. Your pride. Your sense of self. It doesn't erase who you are, not completely, but it does press the volume down. Your quirks become duller. Your sense of decorum fades. Eventually, you stop caring whether your shirt matches your pants. You stop keeping track of whose spoon belongs to whom. You stop looking away when someone is squatting behind a bush, clearly hoping no one sees them. You change, and yet, the boredom still returns. It creeps back, often in the middle of a cloudless morning when the sun feels the same as the day before and your legs continue to move whether you want them to or not. It visits you at the edge of sleep, curling up beside you as you lie in your bedroll, whispering in your ear, "This again?" So, you try to push it back the only way that seems to work, with observation. You start noticing things you once ignored. How the dust changes color with the shifting light. How different wagons leave slightly different wool tracks based on how heavily they are loaded. You realize that oxen have personalities. Real ones. One always snorts when someone curses. Another only responds when you sing from the left side of the wagon. This is your life now. Someone swears they saw a dog riding on a goat. Nobody believes it, but everyone wishes they had been the one to see it. You begin reading the trail signs. Not metaphorical signs, actual ones. Carved into trees. Etched on rocks. Painted on discarded planks. Some offer advice. Some give warnings. Some are baffling. One says, "Don't bury food. Ants will know." Another says, "Sally, come back. We found your hat." And a third, written in the most elegant script, simply reads, "I miss bread." You do, too. By now, your feet feel like they belong to someone else. Cracked. Swollen. Blistered. You rub them gently at night, trying to thank them for carrying you so far. You whisper encouragement. You apologize for the rocks. You plead with them to hold out one more day. Your dreams begin to change. They are no longer filled with towns or houses or familiar routines. Now, you dream of wagons. Of wind. Of firelight and endless walking. Your dreams take place on the trail itself. They are not escapes. They are extensions. Continuations. Sometimes, you dream of walking with no pain. With softer boots. With shade above you. You wake up tired. One day, someone jokes, "Imagine when we reach Oregon." Everyone laughs. Not because it is especially funny, but because it sounds completely unreal. The word Oregon has become a kind of myth. A shared illusion. Something that belongs to another world. You keep walking anyway. The trail does not hand out rewards for endurance. It doesn't offer praise for surviving the monotony. But once in a while, it gives you something small. A gentler breeze. A tastier biscuit. A fire that crackles just the way you like. A song you haven't heard since childhood, and sometimes, in those rare moments, when the night sky stretches wider than your memory, when the firelight flickers gently across quiet faces, when even the oxen are resting and nobody is coughing, you feel something settle over you. Not silence, but peace, not emptiness, but something earned. You breathe it in slowly, and at last, you sleep. At first, nothing seems wrong. The wagon just feels a bit slower, moving with a sluggishness that's easy to ignore. You assume it's the ruts again, those deep, stubborn grooves that turn smooth ground into a trap. Or maybe the soil's soft today, loosened by wind and heat, grabbing at the wheels with fingers made of dust. Either way, you think it's normal. You keep walking. Keep tugging the lead. Keep letting out long, tired sighs that disappear into the breeze, and then, a voice, not loud. Not panicked. Just flat. Almost like an observation. The cow's down. You turn without thinking. It's not a cow. It's one of your oxen. Susan. The calm one. The one with patient eyes and a way of tilting her head toward your voice like she understood every word. She's lying there in the dirt, legs folded awkwardly underneath her, like she simply stopped in the middle of a step and gave up. There's no thrashing, no struggle. Just a kind of heavy surrender. This isn't a stumble. This isn't a break for shade. This is serious. And it might be the thing that ends your journey altogether. Oxen aren't just animals out here. They're power. They're transport. They're the pulse that keeps the whole machine moving. Without them, your wagon is nothing more than a wooden box that you'll have to drag yourself. And no matter how strong you think you are, you know you're not strong enough for that. You hurry to her side, clinging to the hope that maybe she just tripped. That it's the heat, that a few minutes of rest will fix it. You kneel in the dust and place your hand gently on her ribcage, hoping for strength, for life, for motion. But she's breathing too fast. Too shallow. Her hide is warm, but not the good kind of warm. The kind that means something's wrong deep inside. Her eyes open for a moment, just a flicker, then close again. You say her name softly, like it might matter. It doesn't. Other travelers gather. A small, loose circle of concern and experience. Some offer ideas. Some stay quiet. One man with a tired voice mutters that he's seen this before, and walks away before the outcome becomes too familiar. Someone suggests giving her time to rest, maybe a day. Someone else doesn't bother sugarcoating it. Better shoot her and move on, he says flatly, like it's a chore that just needs doing. The air around you changes. Grows thinner. Harder to breathe. Historians still debate whether more oxen were lost to sickness, hunger, exhaustion, or just plain bad luck. But on the trail, the reason doesn't really matter. All that matters is the result. And this one? This one is final. You sit beside her for a long time. Long enough for the sun to slide over its peak and begin the slow fall westward. Long enough for dust to creep into your boots and cling to your tongue. Long enough to understand that this is your last moment with her. Eventually, You make the decision, later, when the shot has already echoed and faded, when her body is rolled aside and covered with the bare minimum of brush and loose dirt, you rise. And you walk. Because that's what you have to do, no one talks about it. Not out loud, the trail doesn't pause to mourn an ox, but you hear the difference. The wagon yoke groans now. Uneven and strange. One side lighter, one side dragging. It's a new sound, and it cuts a little deeper than you expect. Someone lends you a spare ox. Just for a while. You give them a few precious supplies, a whispered thank you, and a silent debt that settles into your chest heavier than any barrel of flour. You start to notice how everyone around you is carrying some kind of loss. There's that man in the red suspenders. He's already buried 3 oxen, and now trudges beside a mule that only half listens. The woman with the wide-brimmed hat. Her wagon's hauled by a cow and a stubborn pony. It's an odd pair, almost comical, but it keeps her moving. And then there's the quiet man, the one you've never really spoken to. He hauls his handcart alone. No animals. Just 2 arms, 2 legs, and more grit than seems possible. Every morning, he leans into the harness and starts walking like it's the only thing he's ever known. The Oregon Trail changes you. It rearranges the order of things. People become beasts. Beasts become companions. You find yourself talking to your oxen more than you talk to the people around you. You start learning their moods, their habits, the way they hesitate at certain stretches of road. You learn to feel their strain as your own, and when they fall, it feels like something inside you topples too. You begin noticing signs of where you didn't see before. The hollows between their ribs. The slight limp in a back leg. The way they wheeze after a long day. You begin feeding them first now, even when supplies run low. You know the truth. If they don't make it, neither do you. You've heard the stories. People eating their oxen. You used to flinch at that thought. Not anymore. Out here, hunger is louder than judgment. You're not there yet. But you understand, so you ration harder. You carry more. You unload barrels from the wagon and hoist them yourself, bearing the load across your back with stubborn pride. You whisper to your remaining oxen each night, promising them green fields, soft grass, clear water. You're not sure if they comprehend. That doesn't matter. Saying it comforts you. One evening, you notice the second ox favoring his left leg. You stop earlier than usual. Kneel again. Brush away the dust. And without thinking, you say his name. Grizzle. It fits, and suddenly, he's not just a beast. He's a fellow traveler. Grizzle lets you clean the sore gently, using a strip of fabric from your undershirt. His eyes meet yours, steady and tired, like he's already endured worse. Maybe he has. You remember a rumor from early in the journey. Some folks swore by singing to their oxen, claimed it soothed them, kept them walking. You hum something tuneless. It's shaky and low, and you barely know the words. Grizzle flicks one ear, then shifts forward. Just a step. Maybe coincidence. Maybe not. It doesn't matter. You'll keep doing it. You talk to them now. About the weather. About the shape of the clouds. About your sore heels. They never interrupt. That counts for something. Your wagon isn't just a box on wheels anymore. It's a system. A fragile, living arrangement of people and animals and roles. There's the one who drives. The one who cooks. The one who knows how to wrap a bandage. And then there are the oxen, who never complain, who carry the hardest burden, who move forward even when no one else can. When one goes down, the whole thing quivers. You've seen it. Wagons falter after a single loss. The people get slower. The wheels lose their shape. Spirits sag. The ones who fall behind stop being part of the group. You pass them, promising you'll send help. But you both know that help isn't coming. Others find ways to survive. They trade. They tie their wagons together. They take turns walking and pulling. Some people are just too stubborn to quit. You learn to become one of them. The next time Grizzle stumbles, you're ready. You catch his shoulder before he tips. You lean your weight into him and murmur soft encouragements like you're speaking sacred words. You brush the dust from his side and lie about the sky. Looks greener ahead, you say. It doesn't. But he believes you. He takes the next step. Around the fire, people speak less than they used to. Not because they're grieving. Because they're tired. Still, when the words come, they're often about animals. Did your ox eat today? That one's got a limp. The Hendersons lost theirs near the river bend. The animals are part of the family now. They always have been, but no one said it before. Even if they smell. Even if they snore, you laugh about it. A little. Just enough. Someone says that in the next life, they want to be a spoiled house cat in a town with sidewalks and stew. You say you'd settle for being a well-fed dog. They nod, and still, you keep walking. Still, you listen to the creak of the harness, the groan of tired limbs. The thump of hooves that are more loyal than most people you've known. You thank Susan once. Quietly. Just once, for getting you this far. You don't share that moment with anyone. There's no room for long grief out here. You have to fold it up, tuck it into your pockets, and keep moving forward. There are still so many miles ahead. The day begins not with birdsong, not with the groaning stretch of muscles or the rattle of wagon wheels. It begins with a scream, not from you. Not this time. From up ahead, somewhere near a wagon maybe 50 feet forward. A sharp, high-pitched cry pierces the early light, slicing through the chatter of the morning fire and the sleepy rustle of canvas. It's a woman's voice, brittle and desperate, raw with fear. Then, just as quickly as it began, it cuts off. You stop what you're doing. Everyone does. Conversations freeze mid-word. Movements halt. The air seems to hold its breath. And before your mind fully understands what it heard, your legs are already moving. You run, when you reach the source of the noise. The scene before you is one you've seen before. You never get used to it. A child, small, no older than 7 or 8, lies in the dust at the base of the wagon. His arms are limp at his sides, his legs twisted at strange angles. A dark stain spreads quickly in the dirt beneath his head, seeping outward like spilled ink. A wagon wheel looms inches from his feet, so close it seems to hover in threat. His mother is kneeling beside him, her hands hovering but not quite touching, her face frozen in a silent cry, carved into panic. The father fumbles with the child's shirt, trying to tear it open or stop the bleeding or just find a way to do something. His hands won't stop shaking. You piece the story together in fragments and guesses. He was climbing, maybe playing, as children do when they get bored or when no one is looking. He slipped. Lost his grip. Fell. No one saw it in time. The wagon kept moving. No time to stop. This is one of the cruel rules of the Oregon Trail. Injuries don't come with warnings. They don't wait for preparation or for help to arrive. They happen quickly, often carelessly, and they leave deep marks. Not just on the body, but on everyone who sees them. The child lives. Somehow. His chest still rises, slow and shallow, with breath. But survival is only the first battle. The real challenge is what comes next, treatment, and that is when you are reminded, with cruel clarity, of a truth you try not to think about too often. Out here, there is no such thing as real medical care. Not in the way you once knew it. Not even close. There are no hospitals. No trained physicians. No antiseptics or sterile rooms. Instead, You have a wheelwright who once pulled a rusted nail out of his foot with pliers, and ever since, he's been known as Document. His confidence is perhaps his most medical quality. And honestly, given the options, he may be your best hope. Every major moment of the human body, illness, injury, childbirth, fever, infection, it all unfolds here, along this unforgiving road. There are no clinics. No laboratories. Just dust, instinct, rumor, and whatever herbs someone swears their grandmother used to boil for everything from headaches to heartbreak. You've seen the effects already, sometimes up close. The gash on your forearm from the broken barrel slats. It festered for days. A woman in a bonnet pressed whiskey-soaked linen against it and muttered something about lard and turpentine. It stung like fire. It might have worked. You're not sure, and then there is childbirth. You've heard the sounds. The muffled screams from behind draped sheets. The rhythmic rocking of a wagon turned temporary birthing room. You've seen women form tight circles, their hands moving with the solemnity of ritual. Rags, bowls, whispers. A father pacing nearby, fists clenched behind his back, like he might will the baby to be born by force of will alone. Historians argue over the mortality rate of births on the trail. Some say it was higher than in settled towns. Others claim it only felt that way because the deaths stayed in memory longer than the safe deliveries. Either way, when a birth goes badly out here, it rarely ends in second chances. Even when it goes well, it never feels safe. The first birth you witness during your own journey is a girl. When the mother finally emerges, her skin pale and shining with sweat, her arms cradling the small bundle, the entire camp gathers. There is a cheer, soft and reverent. Tears are shed, some from joy, some from fear delayed. You give up your last sugar cube so someone can brew sweet tea for the mother. It feels like witnessing a miracle, but beneath the joy, there is a shared knowledge. The line between life and death is thin. It always has been. Infection is the true threat, a blister becomes a boil. A cut turns red, then yellow, then angry with fever. A mosquito bite swells to the size of an egg, pulsing heat. Everyone carries small tins of ointment, applying them to everything from rashes to sore joints. When the tins run dry, you improvise. Honey. Mud. Even bear grease, yes, bear grease, one man swears by it. He keeps a dark glob of it in a folded bit of leather and insists it draws out all manner of poison. He offers it freely to anyone with a cough, a rash, or even bad luck. You pass. Others do not. You rely on boiled water. Lye soap. You brew herbal mixtures you can barely identify. You offer prayers when all else fails, and someone is always praying, to pass the time, or to feel some control. People start listing their injuries like badges. War stories from a battle they're still fighting. I cracked a rib falling off the wagon bench back in Missouri. Still hurts when I sneeze. My hand froze shut in Nebraska. Took 2 weeks before I could hold a fork again. Woke up with a neck so stiff I had to walk backward till lunch. These are the people you walk with. Scarred, limping, aching. But they walk. So do you. A man once claims to have cured his wife's persistent cough with a hot stone and garlic steam. Held the stone to her back, made her breathe deep. Now she coughs and smells like roasted meat. You try not to laugh, but it's hard. Then comes the real terror, snakebite. You see it once. A boy steps off the trail, just a few paces into the brush. You hear his shout. By the time you reach him, a welt has already ballooned on his ankle, angry and red. His lips are pale, his breath thin and fast. No one saw the snake. No one knows what kind it was. That doesn't help. You try everything you've ever heard. Slice the skin. Suck the venom. Tie it off. Loosen it again. Pour whiskey. Pray. Probably all wrong. Possibly all useless. The boy lives. Or he doesn't. After a while, the days begin to smear together, and so do the faces. Memory fogs under the weight of dust and exhaustion. Still, you walk, you start carrying a snake stone, a smooth black pebble said to draw poison from the body. You don't believe it works. But carrying it is better than standing empty-handed when danger strikes. Toothaches are their own special torment. One man moans under his wagon for 3 nights. On the 4th, someone, no one quite remembers who, holds him down. A blacksmith steps forward, grabs pliers, and does what has to be done. No anesthetic. No clean tools. Just whiskey. And pain. The tooth comes out. So does the man's voice, in one long scream that echoes well past the campfire's edge. After that, you stop complaining about blisters. You stop talking about your sore feet. Someone always has it worse. Another woman stumbles into a cooking fire. Her dress catches the edge of the flame. She screams. You help her down. Her leg is red and blistered. You do what you can: flour, bark, damp linen. It hurts. But she thanks you through gritted teeth. The scar will never fade. But she survives. There is one woman, older, slow-moving, who says she used to be a midwife. She carries a small leather kit, the kind once used in barns or back kitchens. Inside, a dull blade, a bent needle, a bit of string that looks more like frayed rope than surgical thread. But her hands are sure, and her eyes sharp. When she speaks, people listen. When she works, they step back. You call her Ma Medic. She doesn't protest. Might even smile once, though it's hard to tell. One evening, while fixing a broken yoke, you cut your palm. Not deep, but dirty. She finds you. Cleans it with some awful-smelling mixture. Wraps it tight. Says something about the moon being off today. You nod. What else can you do? You don't argue with moons anymore. By morning, your hand is swollen. She unwraps it and applies another paste, this one sticky and sharp with pine and something burnt. It helps. Or maybe your body just decided to heal. You begin to notice signs. Yellowing eyes. Coughs that don't fade. Fingers stuck curled. Blood in places there shouldn't be. You learn to gauge the danger. You learn when to worry. You also learn when to ignore it, because if you panicked every time someone coughed, you would never sleep again. So instead, you joke, if I lose a finger, I'll finally stop biting my nails. I only limp after lunch. That counts as progress. You start handing out titles like merit badges: Jed, who plays the fiddle. Doctor of Musical Medicine. Ma Medic. Surgeon General of Sass and Soap, you. Chief Complaints Officer, and still, you walk, still, you bind wounds with strips of shirt. Still, you dodge the contagious and whisper false comfort to the fevered. Still, you pretend a cup of water and a few hopeful words will stop what you cannot name, because the truth remains. You do not have a choice. The trail moves forward, and if you want to live, if you want to see the end of it, you have to move with it. The sky is wrong, you sense it before your eyes confirm it, long before a single word passes from anyone's lips. Before the wind begins to stir with unease, there's already a shift, an invisible heaviness that settles deep in your chest, like something vast and ancient has paused above you. The sun hangs in the sky, sharp and glaring, but oddly lacking in warmth. Its light falls with no comfort, like it's been stripped of kindness. The clouds skitter across the open blue too quickly, moving like they've been chased. And then, on the horizon, once calm and flat like a brushed field, something begins to twitch at the very edge of perception. Someone finally says it. Smoke. You turn toward the west. At first, you don't see anything dramatic. Just a thin haze hanging low on the skyline, grayish and wispy, barely distinguishable from heat shimmer or distant dust kicked up by travelers. It could almost be a trick of the eyes. Could be the remnants of morning fog clinging to the land's edges. But you've seen fog before. Fog doesn't move like this. It doesn't coil and drift and rise in sinuous spirals like a creature waking from its slumber. The more you look, the more you realize, this isn't a haze. This is motion. This is alive, it's fire, still distant, but not as far as you'd like. And certainly not still. You remain rooted for just one moment too long, your brain stalling while your instincts scream. Then the shouts begin to spread like sparks down the wagon line. Prairie fire. Get the wagons in position. Cover everything. Stamp it down. Urgency breaks over everyone like a wave. You try to stay calm. But calm is too slow. Panic is faster, and it's already taken hold. Prairie fires aren't stories whispered by firelight to make children behave. They are real. They are fast. They are ravenous. A single ember landing in dry grass can become a towering inferno in moments, stretching across the plains like a monster set loose. The flames can outrun a horse at full gallop, driven by wind that only seems to blow stronger once the fire begins. Instructions come in fragments, shouted above the growing roar. Form a circle with the wagons. Drench the canvas tops. Dig into the dirt, claw a firebreak, even if it's shallow. Beat the grass with whatever you can grab. Soak shirts, jackets, anything that holds water. Drape them over wood. Smother the flames as they leap. You run like your life depends on it. Because it does, you dip rags into barrels, sling water across canvas, slap soaked cloth over splintering boards. The oxen shift and groan in confusion, their eyes rolling with fear. Children scream, clutching at parents or scrambling beneath wagons. One man shouts orders with a cracked voice, but he might as well be silent, no one hears him over the crackle of advancing flames. It's louder than thunder. It's the sound of 1,000 trees snapping in half. Of every dry thing in the world breaking at once, the air grows thick and gritty. The heat pulses in rhythm, coming in swells that feel alive, almost sentient. Ash rides the wind into your mouth. Your eyes, your lungs. You cough until your ribs ache. But you don't stop moving, then someone yells an idea that sounds like insanity. Set a fire. A smaller fire. Let it burn ahead of the main one, eat the grass clean so the wildfire has nothing left to consume when it reaches that patch. A backfire. Controlled destruction, it might be your only hope, with trembling hands, you light it. The flames leap up instantly, much faster than expected. They race across the prairie, crackling and snarling. The heat sears your skin, and your eyes water uncontrollably. Sparks dance in the air. But it works. The grass is gone. The ground turns to scorched black. And when the main fire arrives, it hits the dead zone, hesitates, and then slows. The fury runs out of fuel. Smoke rises, not as a wall, but as scattered veils of gray that drift and dissolve. The danger passes. Barely, the sky turns a strange shade of rusted orange. Smoke clings to everything. Ash floats in the air like dark snow, soft and eerie, settling on your shoulders, your arms, your face. You collapse where you stand. Not because the fire is gone, but because you physically cannot remain upright another second. One wagon is gone. Consumed entirely. The wood, the canvas, everything blackened and folded in on itself. The family inside escaped in time, running with only the clothes on their backs. Now they sit near the edge of the ring, silent, staring at the smoldering frame as if it were an old friend that betrayed them without warning. Your own wagon didn't burn, but it carries the scent of wet wool, scorched rope, and panic. One side is charred. The canvas is fused to the wood in places. Your hands are blistered from heat and raw from work. Your body aches, and your heart is still racing, like it hasn't realized you're safe yet. That night, you lie awake, the wind brushes against the canvas, and every rustle makes you flinch. Every shift of the fire's coals seems too loud, too sudden. You smell smoke on your blanket, in your shirt, in your hair. You can't escape it. Even your dreams catch flame behind your closed eyes. The official records are sparse, scattered, inconsistent. Historians debate how many emigrants truly died from prairie fires, how many succumbed to the aftermath, exposure, dehydration, despair. But everyone agrees on this: fires came often, burned hot, and gave no warning. Some say the native tribes used to burn patches of prairie to renew the land, to keep it fertile, to help new life grow. You think about that as you stare out over the scorched field. Maybe fire has purpose. Maybe it's part of a cycle. But today, all you felt was ruin, and just when your nerves begin to calm, the wind shifts again. This time, it carries thunder. Prairie storms don't bother with introductions. Lightning strikes hard and sudden, forking across the sky in crooked fingers of white. You see one hit a tree in the distance, maybe half a mile away. It explodes with a sharp crack and a plume of smoke, the smell of burned sap drifting toward you almost immediately. You look for shelter. But there is none. The wagons leak, and the wind screams through every seam like a furious spirit. Rain lashes sideways, pushed hard by gales that make even heavy objects wobble. You crawl under a wagon with 3 others, pressed tight, shivering in soaked clothes, unable to speak through the teeth chatter, and then the hail begins. It comes like thrown stones. Hard. Cold. Unrelenting. Not the soft kind that melts in your hand, but solid chunks of ice that leave bruises. One man takes a blow to the head and collapses, groaning. An ox panics, tears loose, thrashing and crying out. You do your best to protect the food, the tools, the few dry clothes. You fail. So instead, you shield your face. It's all you can do. When the storm finally stops, the land hisses with steam. Water fills every rut and dip in the road. The air feels heavy, damp, and charged with leftover electricity. Your boots squish with each step. Your body is numb with cold, the fire burned too hot. The rain chilled you to the bone. The wind never takes a break. It cuts through shirts and cloaks like nothing matters. You start layering. Whatever you own, you wear. 2 shirts. 3 pairs of socks. A blanket fashioned into a cape. You look absurd. You don't care. Some people get creative. They stuff newspapers into their boots for insulation. You try it. It works, barely. Your toes stop stinging. That's enough. Then the mirages begin. You think your eyes are playing tricks, and maybe they are. But others see them too. Shimmering pools of water glisten in the distance, beckoning. Beautiful, blue, perfect. You walk faster, drawn by hope, lips cracked, mouth dry. But when you arrive, there's nothing. Just more dust. More sand. More lies from the air and sun. The older ones don't blink. You don't see real water until it smells bad, one mutters. He spits into the dirt. Eventually, the trail takes you across a salt flat. It stretches endlessly. A vast pale plain under the blinding sun. No trees. No animals. Not even a blade of grass. The earth crunches beneath your boots, dry and cracked. The wheels creak, louder than usual. The animals pant, flecks of foam on their lips. You stop speaking. Everyone does. Words need moisture, and you have none to spare. You march in silence. The wind whips up again. This time it carries salt. It stings your eyes. Your lips crack and bleed. Someone starts crying and doesn't stop, and then, at last, the ground changes, you spot grass. A patch of green. It's small, but it's real. You fall to your knees and press your face to the earth. You chew a blade of grass like it's the finest food you've ever tasted. You made it through fire, through wind, through lightning and lies, your reward, half-burned stew in a dented tin bowl. And the knowledge that tomorrow, you'll get up and keep going, because the trail does not pause, and neither do you. You don't remember exactly when the landscape began to shift. It didn't announce itself with drama or suddenness. It happened gradually, creeping in with the kind of subtlety that only becomes clear in hindsight. One morning, the world around you is flat and dry, the horizon stretching endlessly in every direction like a forgotten promise. Then, somewhere along the way, the land starts to roll gently. Then it lifts. Then it begins to rise and fall like breath, breaking into waves of pale sagebrush, scattered rock, and fine, persistent dust that clings to your skin and your clothes like a memory that refuses to let go. Welcome to the high desert. This is not a place that feels new. It feels ancient. Older than maps. Older than the trail. Older than the wagons creaking beside you, and certainly older than the bones in your feet, which ache more with every mile. The sun does not merely shine here. It glares, full of judgment, casting its dry heat upon you as if trying to flatten you into the ground. And yet, it demands you keep moving. The nights are no better. They arrive without ceremony, dropping hard and fast, whispering cold into your teeth and crawling down the back of your neck no matter how tightly you wrap your coat or how closely you huddle into yourself. You thought Kansas was dry. That was nothing more than a warm-up. This is the real test, the Great Basin. The Snake River Plain. The high deserts that stretch across what modern maps call Idaho, Oregon, and Nevada. Historians still argue whether the emigrants chose this route out of logic or because they had no other real option. Whether it was safety or desperation that led them here. But none of that matters to you now. You're here, on this endless, biting wind, and it's just you and the wilderness is winning. The wind shows no mercy. It doesn't just blow. It scours. It kicks up sand and sends it flying from places you cannot see, into your eyes, into your ears, into your mouth. It gets between your teeth and grinds like grit. It scrapes your cheeks, your arms, the back of your neck, until your skin feels raw and stinging, as if some invisible force has been slowly but methodically mauling you all day long. You try covering your face with a scarf. It helps for a moment, but not enough. You make a pair of crude goggles from canvas. They fog up and blur your vision. Eventually, you give up trying to fight it. You squint. You pull your hat lower. And you keep walking. The sagebrush is everywhere. At first, it seems beautiful in a strange, unfamiliar way, dusty green, almost silver in the right light, and oddly fragrant. You reach out and touch it, curious. Then, as the miles drag on, it becomes a nuisance. It gets caught in the wagon wheels. It tangles in your socks. It scratches your ankles. You try burning some to cook your meal. It smokes more than it flames and smells like bitter spice and old regret. You cough and give up. In time, you stop fighting the sagebrush too. You accept its presence, just one more part of the world you walk through. But there is one thing you do not make peace with, the snakes. They're here, hidden among the rocks and the brush. You see one stretched across your path. A mottled, dusty thing, too still to be a stick. You stop. It lifts its head. You stare at each other. Neither of you moves. Then, slowly, it slithers away, and only then do you breathe again. A man in your group has a peculiar habit. He calls every snake George. No matter the size, no matter the shape, he tips his hat and mutters, "Morning, George," before stepping around them with care. At first, everyone laughs at him. It seems strange. But he's never been bitten. After a while, no one laughs anymore, you stop mocking him. The salt flats you crossed earlier give way to different terrain now. The earth becomes sandier. But not like the soft, welcoming sand you imagine near a lake. This sand is coarse, sharp, and determined to crawl inside your boots no matter how tightly you lace them. You shake your boots out every night, but by morning, they're full again. You start to wonder if you'll ever know what clean feet feel like again. Then, as if that weren't enough, come the rocks, rough, irregular, scattered like the bones of the earth. Every step feels heavier. The wagon wheels clatter over them, jarring and uneven. They groan, squeak, and knock in unfamiliar ways. You start hearing strange sounds, thunks and creaks that weren't there before. You worry. You stop to check the axles. You check the bolts. You retie the ropes and tighten the fastenings. You pray that nothing breaks, but eventually, something does. The axle snaps. You don't hear it right away. What you feel first is a shift beneath your feet, a strange tilt, a sudden lean to the side. Then a lurch. The whole wagon stutters, then shudders, then sinks to one side like a giant animal collapsing under its own weight. The oxen halt. The line of wagons behind you grinds to a stop. People gather, you get on your knees to inspect the damage. The wood has split clean through. You feel the weight in your stomach drop like a stone. Of course, there's no spare. There never is. One man steps forward. He's got thick fingers and a broad, dusty smile. He rummages in his wagon and pulls out a length of iron. He works quickly. Shapes it over a fire, fits it into place, binds the axle with wire and something that might be prayer. You move again, slowly. Carefully, you give him your last bit of sugar in thanks. That night, you sit around the fire. Someone brews coffee in a battered tin pot. It tastes like rust and old grit, but it's hot and that's enough. Someone tells a story about spotting a mountain lion in the rocks up ahead. Another person swears they saw a ghost walking beside the wagons at dawn. No one argues. No one laughs, no one wants to risk being wrong. The high desert trail doesn't just exhaust your body. It tricks your mind. You think you hear thunder. It's just the ground splitting in the heat. You think you see water, a glimmering pool in the distance, cool and blue. You run toward it. You fall to your knees, it vanishes. Just light and heat, then, finally, you find a stream. Real water, shallow and moving. You rush toward it. Cup it in your hands. It tastes odd. Still, it's wet. But someone tests it more carefully. He licks the edge of the water and spits it out. Alkaline, it won't save you, your mouth protests. Your tongue feels coated. You spit it out too, rinse your mouth with water from your canteen. That's all you can do. You pass a weathered post with something carved into the wood, don't drink the stream. Buried a man beside it. You pick up your pace, the animals suffer the most. Their hooves are cracking. Their eyes go dull. Their breathing grows shallow. Their tongues loll out. You soak rags in your dwindling water and drape them over their necks. You speak to them gently, the way you might speak to a frightened child. You walk beside them, guiding them over each painful step. You search the horizon for relief, for clouds, for shade, for green. You find nothing, only the wind. Always the wind, sometimes it hums. Sometimes it whistles. Sometimes it wails like a thing alive. You begin to wonder if it's trying to speak. And more unsettling still, you begin to wonder what it might say if it ever truly did. At night, camp is hushed. No songs. No fireside laughter. Everyone is too windburned, too sore, too tired to pretend there's anything left to say. You lie on your back under the enormous sky, wrapped in every stitch of clothing you own. You stare up, it's too big. Too wide. Too silent, you miss trees, you dream of forests, damp and quiet. Of green that shelters instead of stings. Of the hush that comes with falling rain on leaves instead of dust. One morning, you wake to something strange, no wind, not a breeze. Not a whisper. The canvas of the wagon stands still. The dust has settled. The sagebrush barely trembles. The silence presses against your ears, thick and heavy, you don't trust it. Neither does anyone else, people pack quickly. Faces drawn. Voices low. Something is coming. You feel it in your chest, then you crest the next hill, and there it is, a wide, gray plain stretches before you, cracked and blinding under the sky. Dust and salt. No grass. No trees. But beyond it, far away, rising up like the edge of the world, mountains, not gentle hills. Not sloping ridges. These are real mountains, jagged and snow-capped, carved like teeth against the sky, the trail goes through them. Eventually, but first, you must cross this plain, the great divide waits ahead, you take a long breath, the air carries no scent at all. Only distance, and then, once again, you begin to walk. You stare at the mountains as if they've just appeared overnight, conjured out of thin air while you slept. They rise abruptly, almost violently, towering so high above the plain that it seems they've shoved the clouds aside, forcing the sky itself to stretch and fold around their jagged peaks. The snow at the summits catches the sunlight and gleams like sharpened steel, like a warning nailed into the heavens. And still, the trail presses onward, winding straight into their heart. You've reached the threshold of the Rocky Mountains now. Everyone always said this would be the most difficult part of the journey. The true crucible. The final test. Which almost feels like a cruel joke. Considering how much of your body and spirit the trail has already stripped away. But even the most seasoned travelers among you, the ones who used to laugh off rattlesnakes and treat twisted ankles like minor inconveniences, fall quiet here. Their jokes vanish. Their eyes narrow. Everyone begins to walk more carefully, the mountain air stings. It's crisper and cleaner than what you're used to, but also thinner, like a fabric stretched too tight. You breathe it in and find it does not satisfy. It doesn't settle in your lungs the way it should. It slips out too quickly, leaving you winded after just a few steps. You pant without meaning to. Your chest tightens. Your legs feel heavier. Even the oxen grunt louder with every incline. Their breathing grows ragged. Their ribs push against their hides like the bones of worn-out ghosts. The climb isn't merely steep. It feels like a challenge directed at you personally. The trail twists and folds back on itself, almost as if unsure of its own decisions. You ascend endlessly, always up, your boots grinding against loose gravel, your hands clinging to the wagon for balance. The wooden wheels protest at every bump. The canvas flaps. The ropes creak. Every step forward demands more than the one before. You move at an angle so unnatural that your calves scream and your knees threaten to give out. Gravity stops being a quiet law of nature and starts to feel like a living force. A presence. An adversary. And it does not like you. There is no room for mistakes. No room for anything. Really. The path narrows to the width of a single wagon, with cliffs yawning below like open mouths. One misjudged turn of the wheel and everything, your supplies, your hopes, your family, could be dashed against the rocks. You check and double-check every rope. You stare at every wheel as if your gaze might hold it in place. You stop blinking altogether when the wind rises, because blinking means risk. And risk means loss. Scholars still bicker over whether the original emigrants chose their mountain crossings with logic, desperation, or blind hope. You're leaning toward the last one. Because standing on some of these passes, you find it hard to believe any thinking person would choose this path. Some stretches don't even resemble trails. They look more like suggestions scratched into rock by someone who had already given up, and yet, something catches your eye. Something quiet and unexpected, beauty, it emerges between the danger and the cold. Maybe it's because the risk makes everything sharper. Maybe it's because silence lives louder here. Either way, you begin to notice the scent of pine needles carried by the breeze. The hush of wind through branches that whisper like they're sharing secrets. A hawk coasting overhead, slow and effortless, tracing lazy circles far above your sweat and struggle. Cold, clear streams weaving their way over stones worn smooth by centuries of movement. The air smells like sap, like damp roots, like the untouched beginning of the world. You spot wildflowers clinging to cracks in the rock, small bursts of color, purple and yellow, bold and bright like they're daring the mountains to erase them. For just a moment, the pain slips away. The hunger, the fatigue, the fear, they go quiet. You remember why you started this journey. You remember that you had hope, then one of the wagon wheels strikes a rock, and the whole thing jolts violently. The frame groans. You lurch forward. Your heart plummets back into your stomach, and the moment is gone. You spend hours digging makeshift trenches to keep the wagons from careening downhill. You wedge stones beneath the wheels to slow their movement. You drag heavy crates and barrels up slopes by hand, using ropes and raw strength. Every task takes longer than it should. Every delay costs you, and time, now, is the most precious thing you own. Because the snow is coming, someone says the word out loud, almost in a whisper, as though it might summon the storm just by naming it. Snow. It carries the weight of a death sentence. Even under the burning sun, even in the middle of summer, the mountains remember the cold. Winter lurks in the crevices, curled deep in the shade. It's waiting. You can feel it in the wind. You know that soon, maybe in a matter of weeks, or days, those innocent white flakes will begin to fall. And when they do, the trail will transform from dangerous to impassable, so you press on. You walk faster. You drive harder. You sleep in shifts. You start giving up things you thought were essential. One family loses a wheel completely. The damage is too great. They abandon the wagon, strapping as much as they can onto a single ox and walking beside it, heads bowed, like worn-down pilgrims. You pass them on a narrow ledge. The father meets your gaze. He doesn't look bitter. Just empty. You ford a river partly frozen over. You slip. You fall in. The water is a blade. You drag yourself out, shivering, speechless. You don't talk for the rest of the day. You use your bare hands to dig into the trail, scraping them against gravel and grit just to slow your descent. The skin peels away. Your palms bleed. You tear up cloth to wrap them and keep moving. Then one morning, the world is white. At first, it's frost. A sparkling crust on the grasses. A delicate shimmer atop the canvas wagon roof. Beautiful, in its own way. Then the frost thickens. Flakes begin to fall. They pile up. They stick. They hide the trail. They fill in the ruts. And suddenly, you can't tell where to place your feet. Panic ripples through the group. You build larger fires. You burn through your firewood at double the speed. You wear every layer you own, every scrap of fabric you brought, and still the cold worms its way into your bones. One person's lips turn a worrying shade of blue. Another starts bleeding from the nose from the dry air. The oxen falter. Their hooves slip. They grow sluggish, blinking slowly, their bodies trembling. You walk behind them, pushing against their flanks, shouting, pleading. You think you see tears in their eyes. Or maybe it's just the wind throwing ice into yours. A peculiar moment sticks with you. One of the travelers wraps strips of burlap soaked in tar around the oxen's feet. Someone laughs and calls them snow boots. You all chuckle at the absurdity. Then you do it too. There comes a moment in a narrow canyon where every wagon is locked in line, nose to tail, no room to veer or turn. The walls close in on both sides. You inch forward. Then you hear something above. A clatter. A sound like a handful of pebbles tossed down a hill. Everyone stops breathing. One rock tumbles down, just one. It bounces, settles, and rolls to a stop, then silence again, and the caravan moves. Eventually, you reach South Pass, the high plateau where the Rockies soften just enough to let you through. It feels like a gift and a cruel joke all at once. Yes, the ground is flatter. But here, the wind picks up again, lashing at your face, tearing at your coat. And beyond this point, the land stretches out. The journey is far from over, but something has changed. You begin to descend, not rapidly. Not with ease. But enough that you feel it. The air gains weight. The snow thins. The trees begin to look different. The evergreens fade into cottonwoods. The hard rock underfoot gives way to gentler soil. The path seems to widen, as though the land itself has unclenched its fist. You cross the Rockies. You don't cheer. You don't fall to your knees. You just keep walking, because the trail still stretches on ahead. But deep inside, something lifts. You survived something impossible, and for one fleeting, flickering moment, you allow yourself to feel it. You thought the worst was behind you, after crossing the Rockies, after trudging through the snow, after nearly watching your wagon plunge into a ravine and feeling your sanity slip away in the dizzying heights of the mountains, you allowed yourself to believe that maybe, just maybe, the trail would offer a reprieve. Not ease, exactly, but something kinder. Something gentler. You pictured undulating hills, softly rolling beneath your feet. Golden meadows stretching wide, dotted with sunlight and wildflowers. A long, gradual descent into something that felt like mercy, that, as it turns out, was a fantasy, because what greets you instead is a swindle, a cruel joke wrapped in false hope. And that joke has a name, the trading post. You arrive at one like a man crawling across a desert finally spotting an oasis, eyes wide, tongue dry, limbs barely holding on. In many ways, that is exactly what you are. It has been weeks since you had access to proper supplies. Your last strip of bacon disappeared somewhere back near the base of the mountains. Coffee? That is something you now speak of like a distant legend. Your shoes are so worn they slap against your heels with every dragging step. So when you see the wooden sign marking a place where goods might be sold, where relief might come, it feels like stumbling upon salvation, but then you step inside, and you see the prices. A single iron nail costs 10 cents, which might not sound like much, until you remember 10 cents could once buy a small meal. A sack of flour sits near the counter, its scent rank and musty, as though it has been soaked in rain and forgotten in the corner of a barn. It's selling for a full $1. There is a bottle labeled tonic, its glass catching the sun like it holds gold. It promises to cure everything from fever to heartbreak. The cost? 1 gold coin and what remains of your belief that people are generally good. The man behind the counter smiles. It's not a warm smile. It's not even an apologetic one. It is the smile of someone who knows they've won before the game begins. Because he knows what you know, you don't have a choice, so you trade. You hand over your last serviceable blanket, the one you wrapped yourself in during the coldest nights, and receive in return a modest sack of beans. You give up a silver button, polished and saved from your Sunday best, in exchange for a spool of thread. One man parts with his pocket watch, the only heirloom he carried from his father, for a bent barrel hoop. A woman takes off her wedding ring, her hand trembling, and trades it for a pound of sugar and a quiet, almost embarrassed God bless from the man behind the counter. It isn't robbery in the legal sense. It's not a hold-up at gunpoint. It's just opportunity. And on this trail, opportunity is more expensive than anything you've ever known. You ask about medicine. He offers a small bottle and calls it snake oil. He means it. Historians still go back and forth about whether men like him believed in what they sold or knew it was a lie. You take a sip. The taste is somewhere between peppermint and pond water. You don't feel healed. You do feel slightly disoriented. Someone else tries it and insists their pain is gone. They smile for the first time in days. You wonder if they're cured. Delusional, or just drunk, this is not a general store. It is more like a card table in a backroom saloon. You lay down your valuables and take a chance. You trade what you must, walk away without what you can't afford, and curse what's left behind. You thought the worst sacrifices were over. But the trail is endlessly inventive in what it demands from you, and it's not just the trading posts that take advantage. You meet a man wearing a stained coat and a hat too large for his head. He offers you a map, gestures toward the Blue Mountains, and swears he knows a shortcut. He says it can shave a week off your journey. A faster way, he whispers, as if sharing a sacred secret. You glance at the map. It looks like someone sketched it in a hurry on a strip of shirt sleeve, using berry juice and guesswork. You decline. Someone else in your group doesn't. They follow him. You never see them again. Later, you cross paths with a peddler who claims to be a doctor. He says he can draw the pain out through your spine using only pressure and prayer. He smells like vinegar, stale bread, and desperation. No one volunteers. One young man in your group begins hawking what he calls miracle biscuits. They are regular biscuits, dry and pale, but with chalk mixed into the dough. He insists they strengthen bones. He's only 22 and already calls himself an entrepreneur. You roll your eyes but buy one anyway. Just in case, at one outpost, there's a sign painted in red that reads, "We take teeth." Below the sign, a large jar full of yellowed molars sits next to the cash box. No one dares ask why. No one really wants to know. Not every trading post is a scam, though. Once, you find one run by a couple with wind-weathered faces and steady hands. They've been there for 10 years, they say. Their prices are reasonable. Their inventory is limited but honest. A child in your group is running a fever. They give you broth, no charge. You leave a thank you note, etched in dull pencil into a splintered piece of wood, but such kindness is rare. Most places are a blur of raised voices, grabbing hands, and desperation. You elbow your way through crowds for firewood. You raise your voice to be heard. You barter not only for goods but for scraps of news. How far to the Dallas? Is there still water at Flag Butte? Did the Whitman mission really shut down? Has the Columbia spilled over? Everyone answers. No one knows for sure. The louder the voice, the less trustworthy the words, so you begin learning how to read people instead of listening to them. The twitchy ones are lying. The calm ones are bluffing. The ones with liquor on their breath sometimes let the truth slip out without realizing it. You collect these rumors like tokens, hoping one of them leads somewhere real. Then you come across people who speak no English at all. Tribes from nearby lands approach the trail with goods of their own. Pelts, berries, dried meat, baskets, beaded belts. Some of them are friendly. Curious. They gesture, they offer, they smile. You smile back. You trade small gifts. You nod in gratitude. Others say nothing. They watch from a distance. You keep moving. Your group starts arguing more now. Distrust brews. You can feel it simmering. Hunger gnaws at patience. Fatigue wears away kindness. One person accuses another of stealing their stash of dried peaches. Voices rise. You break up the fight with 2 strips of jerky and an unspoken agreement to never speak of it again. Dinner that night is silent. You wonder how many friendships shattered somewhere on this trail. You suspect most of them did, and all around you, the world keeps changing, the soil beneath your boots darkens and softens. The trees rise taller, their branches reaching toward each other across the path. There are more birds overhead, more rivers nearby, more lush green spreading into view. The air carries the scent of pine. Morning fog curls between the trunks. You think you are getting close to Oregon, you hope you are, but the trail has one last trial. You reach the Columbia River. It stretches wide in front of you, colder and more unpredictable than anything you've yet faced. Its surface ripples like muscle beneath skin. You have two choices now. Take the trail that circles it, winding through steep cliffs and hard terrain. Or try to float across. Some choose the river. They dismantle their wagons, lashing boards together into makeshift rafts. They climb aboard, hopeful. They tie their oxen behind or loose them on shore. Then they push off. Sometimes the current is kind, sometimes it is not. You watch one raft spin in slow, sickening circles. A barrel breaks loose. A child screams. The raft hits a rock. It doesn't capsize, but it comes close. They make it across. Barely, you choose to walk, the path clings to cliffs. It narrows again. You press your shoulder to the rock face and edge forward, your feet finding uncertain purchase. You feel the river waiting below. Its pull is silent, steady, terrifying. There is a section known as the Narrows. A wagon barely fits through. There is rock above your head. There is water yawning below. You cannot turn. You cannot back up. One mistake, and it's over. You make it through, but your nerves unravel. That night, your hands shake as you eat. You lie down and dream of falling, then, just before dawn, you wake to birdsong. Clear. Crisp. The first sound of peace in weeks. You have reached the edge. The edge of Oregon. The edge of your strength. The edge of what you believed you could endure. You survived the liars, the swindlers, the schemes. You gave up what you had to give. You made it through the madness, and now the trail curves one last time, almost home. There's a saying you hear whispered around the fires now. It's quieter than a prayer, more solemn than most goodbyes, and it carries a weight that words rarely hold. The phrase is simple. Just 4 words. But they land like a stone every time, another one gone. You hear it more often these days. The voice that says it changes, but the tone stays the same. Tired. Resigned. Hollow. No one says it loudly. It's not meant to be loud. It's something passed along gently, like a secret, or a final blessing spoken through clenched teeth. You've seen death before. Of course you have. It was there back in Kansas, waiting near the riverbanks. It lingered in the tall grass of the prairie. It stalked the wagons through the mountains. But now, something feels different. Here, in this stretch of the journey, it comes faster. Sharper. Less apologetic. It's as if the land itself is in a hurry to collect what it's owed. You've entered the final phase of the trail, and this is no victory lap. It is not a gentle descent into paradise. It's a place people rarely name out loud, but when they do, the name sticks. They call it the graveyard stretch. No one really knows who named it. Perhaps it wasn't a single person. Maybe the name grew out of the trail like the wild sage that pushes through the cracks in the dry earth. Maybe it simply became the only thing left to call it. The trail doesn't argue. It wears the name well. Every mile now feels like walking through a long, winding funeral. The path is lined with reminders. They're not official graves. There are no headstones, no marble plaques. Just markers made by hand. A stick jammed into the ground, its bark peeled away to reveal carved initials. A little pile of rocks arranged carefully. Crosses made from wheel spokes, from chair legs, from what used to be someone's porch rail. Some graves carry names. Some just dates. Others have neither. Sometimes all you see is a coat button half buried in the trail dust. Or a rag doll, damp from the last rain. Or a single boot, cracked and soft, slowly sinking into the dirt. It's not the violence of death that cuts deepest here. It's the stillness. People are too tired to mourn the way they once did. They've lost the energy for grief in its fullest form. Tears come less often now. Speeches even less. When someone dies, there is a moment of silence. Just one. Then comes the sound of a shovel biting into earth. Then the silence returns. There's no time for rituals. No time to shape grief into ceremony. The ground is stubborn. The sky grows darker earlier. The winds are shifting. If you stop for every soul that falls here, you'll never leave this place at all, so you don't, you bury them quickly. Respectfully, but quickly, and then you keep going. One morning, you wake and realize a wagon is missing. Just vanished. No shouting in the night. No cries for help. No final campfire chat. They must have turned back. Or taken another path. Or stopped altogether. No one brings it up. Not directly. Not even a whisper. Historians, years later, will debate what claimed the most lives along the trail. Some say illness. Others say accident. Many say pure exhaustion. But you know the answer. It's all of them. Sometimes, all at once. Sometimes, none at all. Sometimes people just go to sleep and never open their eyes again. You pass a wagon that's splintered and silent, left at the side of the trail. Nothing inside but a rough message carved into the slats, too late. Buried near willow. You search for that willow for a while, eyes scanning the trail, but you never find it. Your boots land softer now. You walk more carefully. Your voice, when you speak, drops lower. Even the oxen seem to understand something has changed. Their plodding rhythm slows, their breathing heavier, and then, one day, it's your turn to dig. The person wasn't your best friend. You didn't know them inside and out. But you remember their voice. You remember the way they laughed, how it bounced like marbles in a tin. You remember that night they shared beans with you when you had none left. You remember liking them. They go quickly. No signs the night before. Just a sudden cough. A wobble in their step. A breath that comes out in pieces. Then silence, again. Final and full, so you dig, the soil fights back. It's packed hard, knotted with roots and riddled with stones. Each shovelful feels like a struggle between you and the earth. Sweat rolls down your back and into your eyes. Your shoulders feel like fire. But you keep going. The body is wrapped in a blanket, nothing fancy. There is no box. No pine wood. Just cloth and rope made from torn shirt sleeves. A few people stand around you. One of them mutters a prayer, or maybe just a string of sounds meant to be one. You nod. Even though you don't quite hear it, you pile the rocks slowly. Carefully. When you place the final one, you leave your hand there for a moment, pressing down like you're sealing the memory into the ground itself. Then you leave. After that, sleep doesn't come easy. You lie in your bedroll and watch the stars appear one by one. They don't twinkle. They stare. And you wonder. You wonder which of them, if any, is watching someone else dig tonight. You wonder if anyone will ever watch over you. You wonder what your own grave would look like. Who would do the digging? Whether they'd speak your name before they walked away. Whether they'd remember it at all. You never say these thoughts aloud, but you are not alone in thinking them. Even the children can sense the weight of it now. Their games stop. Their voices fade. One girl keeps a doll close. It has no arms. She holds it as if it were breathing. Rocks it gently by the fire. You hear her whisper, "Not you too." And your heart cracks a little. Some people turn inward. Hardened. Silent. Eyes forward, always. They build walls inside themselves with every mile. Others react the opposite way. They talk constantly, filling every quiet with imagined futures. They talk about the homes they'll build, the land they'll farm, the names they'll give their children, their dogs, even their favorite trees. It isn't foolishness. It's survival. It's a way of keeping the darkness from getting in too deep. A way to remind themselves that they are still more than bones in motion. There's someone in your group who begins carving names into trees. Not just the names of the lost. The names of the living too. They call it a record. A memory. A way of telling the world that they were here. That they mattered. That the trail didn't erase them. One evening, as dusk settles like a blanket across the hills, you add your name to a tree. Quietly. A small mark. Nothing fancy. The next morning, the tree is gone. Struck by lightning in the night. Split right down the middle. You don't carve another. The ground starts to change under your feet. It softens. The rain is no longer rare. It becomes a constant companion. Not violent or loud, just steady. A cold, clinging mist that seems to wrap around your skin and settle inside your bones. Nothing ever dries. Blankets stay damp. Boots squish and slosh with every step. The wet becomes part of you. Someone begins to cough and doesn't stop. Another starts to limp and can't remember when it began. The line between sickness and fatigue becomes too blurred to follow. You start to feel like you're not even human anymore. Not quite. More like some creature made of muscle and mud, designed only to move forward. No thoughts beyond the next step. No dreams beyond the next mile. You climb a hill one afternoon. It's not tall. Not steep. But partway up, your legs simply stop. They crumple beneath you. You collapse into the mud, arms trembling, lungs clawing for air. You don't cry. You can't. The tears dried up somewhere back near the third grave. A hand appears. You don't recognize it. Maybe it doesn't matter. It grabs yours. Pulls you up, you rise, you walk again. This trail does not pity. It does not spare. But it teaches you that loss is part of movement. That reaching the end is not guaranteed. That the goal may never have been the destination at all. That maybe just moving, just trying, is enough. You bury 3 more that week. After that, you stop counting. But one night, as the fire burns low and the sky holds its breath, someone tells a story. It's about a man who once planted a tree at every grave he made. Said it was his way of helping the land remember. Said one day, people would walk this same path and see forests where grief once lived. You hold on to that story, even if it isn't true, because in a place like this, you need it to be. You smell it before you see it. The stink rises up ahead, carried faintly on the wind. Sweat, leather, animal, smoke. Not the usual trail odor that's become your second skin, the one you've been marinating in for months and have almost stopped noticing. No, this is something else. Sharper. Thicker. A kind of rancid sweetness, like someone tried to perfume a wound or cover rot with lavender. It clings to the air in a way that makes your stomach tense before your brain can catch up. It's the smell of people. Too many people. Too close together. And that can only mean one thing: you're nearing a fort, a real one. With walls. With order. With smoke curling up from chimneys and someone's supper burning in a blackened pot. You hear it before you see it, a hammer striking metal, the rhythmic clang of a blacksmith in the distance. Laughter rides on the wind, tangled with a child's cry and the coarse edge of cursing. And then, just beyond the ridge, it appears. An outpost of something resembling civilization, rising from the wilderness like it doesn't belong there at all. You trudge down the hill slowly, boots squelching in the mud, knees aching with every reluctant bend. You try not to get your hopes up, but they climb anyway, because forts are complicated. You remember what you once imagined. Warmth. Bread. A soft place to sleep. A fire that didn't smell of desperation. Someone waiting at the gate to shake your hand and say, "You made it. Welcome. Here's a hot bath and a chair that doesn't wobble." What you get is something different. Something closer to a yard sale being run by pirates in the middle of a street fight. You pass through the gates and are hit by a wave of noise. People shouting across open space. Animals braying from enclosures too small to hold their frustration. Children darting beneath wagons like windblown leaves. A man waves a rusted kettle in the air, arguing red-faced with a soldier whose eyes have seen too many of these scenes to care anymore. Nearby, a woman sobs into her hands. You can't tell if it's relief or rage or some cocktail of both. The fort itself is a tangle of commerce and chaos. Barrels are stacked high with items you'd kill for but can't afford, flour packed tight in cloth sacks, boots lined with fur, coils of rope, mirrors that shimmer like magic, tobacco leaves dried and curled. Bullets sorted into little cloth pouches, nails rattling in tin cans. Books, too, though no one seems to be reading. Everything is labeled, priced high, and watched closely. Some wagons are parked off to the side with no sign of ever moving again. One leans so heavily against a tree that it looks like it gave up mid-sentence. You wonder how long it's been there. A week? A month? Longer? The people nearby don't speak. They just sit, hollow-eyed, like ghosts haunting their own journey. Your stomach twists. Then it growls. You smell bread. Not trail bread, not hardtack or scorched flapjack, but real bread. Warm, yeasty, soft. You turn toward it like a moth chasing firelight. You find it at a stall manned by someone who looks like they know exactly how desperate you are. One loaf. Half stale. It costs 3 times what it would have back in Missouri. Maybe more. You hand over what you have left without hesitation. You don't chew. You inhale. The crust scrapes your throat, but you barely notice. It is the best thing you've tasted since that one bite of bacon 300 miles ago. Fort life is a strange performance. Half theater, half unraveling. You see traders in spotless vests that are too clean to trust. Soldiers who wear weariness like armor. Missionaries trying to talk salvation and theology to people who mostly want axle grease, some quiet, and a decent set of boots. Everything here costs more than it should. But you pay it. Or you barter. Or you beg. You do what you must. Because this place is your last checkpoint. The final outpost before the real wilderness begins again. Beyond here, it's Oregon or nothing. One afternoon, someone nails a notice to the main fort wall. The letters are carved deep into wood, darkened with soot and rain. Final push to Willamette. Prepare wisely. Winter waits for no one. You read it more than once. Not because you don't understand. But because you do. You take a long breath and begin to inventory what's left. Your wagon is a ghost of itself. The once sturdy canvas is now patched with shirts and fabric scraps, threadbare and flapping. One of the wheels has developed a wobble that speaks of retirement. The oxen are gaunt, their ribs outlined beneath taut skin. Their eyes have gone somewhere far away. You've taken to sleeping beside them, not for heat, not even for safety, but out of a strange belief that they're carrying not just your belongings, but your spirit too. You repair what you can. You trade for what you cannot fix. You sell the things that no longer serve. At one point, you almost sell your spare pair of boots. But someone mutters that the next stretch is all rock and regret. You keep the boots. That night, someone starts a small celebration. Not because you've made it, but because you're close enough to pretend. There's music, thin, off-key, played on a dented fiddle with a missing string. Someone dances barefoot, kicking up dust. Someone else pours the last of their precious coffee into a tin cup just to smell it one last time. You sit by the fire, quiet, letting your shoulders drop for the first time in days. Then someone brings out a flag. It's not large. Maybe a foot across. Hand-stitched. Edges frayed. It has seen miles too. They plant it beside the fire, the fabric catching the flicker of flames. Someone salutes it, someone else laughs and says the words you've heard 100 times, but never quite like this: manifest destiny. The words hover, uninvited but impossible to ignore. You've heard them back home, on porches and in pulpits, in newspapers and speeches. Glorious. Patriotic. Promised. But here, they feel heavier. Less like a guiding star and more like a coat someone slipped over your shoulders without asking. It does not fit. Historians still argue what manifest destiny really meant. Was it a divine right? An excuse to conquer? A fevered dream in disguise? You're not sure anymore. You just know what it smells like: blistered feet, burnt beans, wet wool, and the sharp tang of ambition left out in the sun too long. The idea that you were meant to come this far doesn't bring comfort. Not after everything you've seen. Not after what you've had to bury. Not after the silence that followed, but still, you look at the flag. You don't look away, because if this trail has taught you anything, it's that belief, even belief in the wrong thing, can still be enough to keep your legs moving, and you're still moving. The next morning, you leave the fort. There is no parade. No fanfare. Just the same creaking wheels, the same groaning oxen, and boots that feel too tight in all the wrong places. You set your face to the trail again. The land begins to change. The trees grow thicker, taller, their branches knit with green. Real green. Not the dry, desperate kind you saw weeks ago, but lush, vivid, almost reckless in its softness. It feels like the earth is trying to make amends, to offer something beautiful before the end. You pass a stream that glitters like glass. You drop to your knees and plunge your face in without hesitation. The water is icy and perfect. The cleanest thing you've tasted in weeks. Maybe longer. Birdsong returns. You hadn't realized how much you missed it until it wraps around you again. A deer watches from the tree line, unmoving. You raise a hand in greeting. It blinks slowly and does not flee. You walk past old ruts in the ground, wagon tracks fossilized in the dirt. Signs that others have been here, some long gone. You find carved initials on the bark of a tree: 1851, we made it. You run your fingers over the letters like a prayer. You're close now. You can feel it humming beneath your boots. But close does not mean safe. The trail saves its last tricks for those who think they've won. A broken bridge. A sudden mudslide. A tree fallen like a dare across the path. You face them all with a kind of calm born from exhaustion. The kind of calm that understands panic is wasted breath. You help others. Others help you. Pride is a thing long left behind. There is only grit now. Only forward. You walk with your head down. Not in defeat. But in awareness. Because the ground matters just as much as the sky. Every step is a decision. Every stone is a story, and when someone behind you asks, "How much further?" you do not hesitate, you smile. You say, "Not far." Because even if it is a lie, it is the kind that helps, and sometimes, that is the only kind that matters. It begins as a rumor, a whisper passed down the line, hushed and deliberate, as if speaking it too loudly might make it vanish into the wind. You can see it from the ridge. The Willamette Valley, Oregon, the end, you don't rush toward it. Not because the excitement isn't there, it is. Deep inside, hidden under the soreness that grips every muscle, behind the calluses on your feet and the tightness in your shoulders, your heart leaps at the possibility. It stirs like something that had long gone dormant, blinking in the light after months of darkness. But still, you've learned. Out here, you do not run toward anything, no matter how good it sounds. Hope has teeth. And if you reach too fast, too carelessly, it will bite you with a vengeance, yet there is something unmistakably different about the air. It feels less like a burden. It moves softer, like the edge of a quilt instead of a blade. The sunlight that filters through the canopy above no longer feels harsh or tired. It glows golden, with a warmth that feels less like fire and more like memory. The leaves have turned a shade of green you forgot existed. Not the dull gray-green of desert scrub or brittle sagebrush, but deep and vivid, lush like a painting, or a dream. Ferns stretch themselves in delicate spirals along the edges of the trail, as if daring to believe in gentleness. Moss clings to the faces of stones, soft and alive. And the sound of water returns. Not the desperate gasp of a shallow trickle, nor the roar of flood or danger. It babbles. It sings, almost. It is strange, how something as pure as beauty can feel so unfamiliar. So foreign, and you are not the only one who feels it. The wagon train moves in near silence now. Not from grief. Not even entirely from exhaustion. There is awe beneath the quiet. Reverence. As if no one wants to break the spell with words. As if speaking would disturb something sacred. The thought hangs unspoken, but it hums in every look, every step, every breath. We are almost there. Still, the air carries a weight. Not of doubt. Not of fear. Just something hard to name. You've been walking for so long that the idea of stopping feels like trying to imagine a world without sky. It is unsettling in its own way. What happens when there are no more wagon ruts to follow? When there is no creak of wood behind you? No waking each day to the smell of sour beans? The grit between your teeth, the ache in your spine as familiar as your own name, you try not to dwell on it. Instead, you keep your mind on the ridge, the final climb. It is not steep. But your body is weary enough that every inch feels like a mountain. Your legs ache with every step, your knees screaming in quiet protest. Your hands grab whatever they can reach, rough bark, exposed roots, the weathered edge of a wagon rail. The oxen strain forward, muscles tight, heads low. They grunt and breathe heavy, like even they understand what waits at the top. No one speaks. Words are too small for this moment. All you hear is breath. Panting. Gritted teeth. The quiet rhythm of determination. And then, at last, you reach the top, and you see it. The valley opens before you like a revelation. A canvas painted in every shade of green. Rolling hills stretch outward like soft waves. In the distance, forests rise thick and dark, promising shelter and shadow. Fields already plowed mark where others have arrived before you. A river winds gracefully through the land, catching light like a ribbon of silver. Smoke curls gently from far-off chimneys. There are fences. There are homes. There is movement and life, quiet and steady. Real life. You do not cheer. You do not scream. There are no whoops of celebration. You simply look, because after everything, after the losses, the hunger, the endless days of dust and uncertainty, this place does not feel like triumph. It feels like something else. It feels like a beginning. Behind you, someone starts to cry. The sound is not loud. It is soft and trembling, like a dam breaking after holding back too much for too long. It is the sound of relief that doesn't know how to express itself. You reach backward without turning and take their hand. You don't know them. Not really. Not their story or their dreams. But you have walked the same miles. You have faced the same sky. The same dust, the same fears. And in that, you know their heart well enough. Historians still argue over whether this moment was as powerful as the journals made it seem. They wonder if the stories were embroidered with sentiment, polished until they gleamed with nostalgia. But standing there, looking out over that valley for the first time, you do not feel something romantic, you feel the weight of it. The cost. The truth, and above all, you feel that it was earned. The trail is not finished yet, there are still miles to go. You begin the descent slowly, one careful step at a time. The path curves between trees, dips into muddy clearings, crosses makeshift bridges that creak under the wagon's weight. You pass others who made it ahead of you, their wagons parked near the tree line. Children chase each other barefoot through grass so green it almost hurts your eyes. A woman waves to you from a porch made of rough-cut wood. You lift your hand in return, and when she smiles, your throat closes. Tears come without warning. You let them, no one says, "Welcome." They do not need to, you feel it in the air. That night, you set up camp once again. You know it will be one of the last times. The fire is steady. The stew simmers with something more than beans and desperation. Someone bakes a biscuit that doesn't turn to stone when it cools. You eat slowly. It feels like a gift. You lie in your bedroll and listen, not for wolves or wind or wagon wheels, but for frogs. For crickets. For the rustle of leaves that aren't filled with danger. The trees no longer whisper threats. They simply breathe. You sleep deeply. Without fear. Without dreams, just rest. But when morning comes, the illusion begins to crack. The valley is not paradise. You wake to a new kind of chaos. Men arguing over land claims. Families hurrying to mark property boundaries. Voices sharp with urgency, maps drawn with shaking hands. The rule is simple. First come, first served. And the pace is relentless. You thought you would arrive to find a home waiting. You imagined a quiet handshake, maybe a deed passed from one hand to another. Instead, you realize the truth. Oregon is not a reward, it is a race. You gather your belongings. You hitch the oxen once more. This time, you move not to survive, but to claim. To establish something. To place yourself on the land in a way that matters. In a way that lasts. You find a patch near the edge of the woods. It is not the flattest. Not the easiest. But it is open. And more importantly, it is available. You claim it. You hope that will be enough. You build a shelter from the bones of your wagon. You press your hands into the soil as if it might remember you. As if it might accept you. You take the seeds you carried the entire way, still wrapped in linen, still dry. You plant them with care. You find a stream. You name it, not after yourself. But for someone you lost along the way. You meet others. Your neighbors. They are worn down just like you. But they smile. They bring tools. They speak of planting. Of storms. Of staying. That word settles on your shoulders like a coat. Staying. After so much movement, it almost feels like a betrayal. But you stay, you build, you allow yourself to rest. You look up at the sky and, for the first time in a long while, you are not asking what comes next. One day, a group of new travelers passes by. They are coated in dust. They look exhausted, hungry, sunburnt, uncertain. You offer them water. You hold out a bucket. You say, "Almost there." Because even if this place is not quite heaven, not the dream you once carried in your pocket like a folded letter, it is something, and after everything you've endured, after everything you've given and lost, it is enough. The final mile doesn't feel real. It unspools beneath your feet with an ease that feels suspicious, almost eerie in its gentleness. The trail here is flat, its curves softened by time and wind, its ruts worn down into suggestion. Tall grasses sway on either side, catching the light like threads of gold. Long shadows stretch lazily across the path, dancing in the breeze that drifts through the trees above you. Birds sing as if the air has nothing left to fear. For once, the sun touches your shoulders not like fire, but like a warm hand resting there in quiet companionship, and yet, you glance around often, unsure. Part of you expects something, anything, to break the spell. A sudden downpour. Maybe. Or a wheel to catch on a root and shatter. A scream. A shadow. A final, cruel twist, but nothing comes, no disaster. No warning shout. No final test, you just keep walking, and somehow, that's the strangest thing of all, there is no gate waiting to open with fanfare. No banner flapping in the wind with your name painted across it. No official with a logbook and ink-stained fingers to mark your arrival in some ledger of survivors. No one steps out from the trees with a medal or a speech. There is no music, no fireworks, no parade. Just the trail easing forward until it curls gently past a stand of pines, and the world ahead shifts. Suddenly, it's there, the open land. You stop walking, you blink, this is it, you're here. The Willamette Valley stretches wide before you, layered in hues that feel almost impossible, gold wheat fields, green forests, and hills rolling into the horizon like a slow breath. The trees in the distance seem older, stronger, quieter. The air smells of damp soil, pine sap, and the first faint promise of rain. You can hear the river nearby again, but its voice is different now. Less like something to be crossed or escaped. More like something humming to itself, like it belongs here, like you do. You unyoke the oxen slowly. They stumble a little, unsure whether to brace for more. Then, gradually, they settle. One of them folds into the grass, exhales once, and does not move again. You kneel beside it, resting your hand against its flank, feeling the rise and fall of its breathing. You don't speak. The moment doesn't need words. You don't have any left, anyway. Your wagon creaks one last time as you guide it against a slope. You step back, looking at it the way someone might look at an old companion, worn, battered, but faithful. Its wooden frame leans, its wheels are not quite true, its canvas is a patchwork of desperate fixes. And yet, it carried you here. It survived every mile you did. You sit down in the tall grass and feel your body begin to thaw. Your feet throb in a way that feels almost hollow now, like echoes of pain instead of pain itself. Your back, long a map of aches and bruises, goes still. Your hands, cracked and calloused, fall open in your lap. And inside you, buried somewhere deep, your heart, so often clenched, begins to soften. Around you, others are doing the same. Packs are dropped. Axes lowered. Boots removed. People sit or lie down or simply stand and stare. There is no cheering. No outburst of joy. Only the heavy silence of disbelief. You made it, not everyone did, the thought creeps in like a shadow at dusk. You glance around. You remember. The spaces between the wagons speak louder than the wagons themselves. You know which faces are missing without needing to count. You remember the stories told around the fires that will never be finished. You remember who used to walk beside you. No one says their names, but you hear them, you carry them. Someone nearby lifts a hammer and begins shaping timber. Another plants the first seeds into the soil. A child runs barefoot into the field, stumbles, and laughs with wild abandon. A man stands at the edge of the river and watches it flow, unmoving, as though he's forgotten what comes next. The land welcomes. But it does not coddle. You learn quickly. You learn how to split logs without shattering them. How to catch fire with damp wood. How to stretch a cup of cornmeal into something that fills, even if only barely. You learn which berries turn your tongue numb, and which taste like sunshine. You learn which neighbors will share their tools, and which won't. You learn when to patch the roof before the fog comes, and when to let it drip. It isn't what you dreamed, it is harder, it is smaller, but it's real, and that, somehow, makes it more precious. In time, people begin to ask. The newcomers. Children born after the dust settled. Travelers passing through on their way to somewhere else. A woman with a notebook, eyes bright with questions. Was it hard? You pause, you remember the cracked earth. The heat that bled into your bones. Rivers that tried to carry you away. Snow that burned your lips. Graves too shallow. Fires too cold. Bacon gone too soon. Nights too long. You also remember the laughter. The songs hummed between wagons. The way stars looked when you were too tired to fear them. The way hands reached out to lift you when you fell. The way walking became something like prayer. Yes, you say. It was hard. Then you smile, not wide, but sure, but I made it. That becomes your answer to everything. Did you see buffalo? Yes. Did you eat bugs? Yes. Did you cry? Yes. Did you walk the whole way? Yes. Did you ever think about turning back? Every single day, did you? No, and sometimes, when the wind changes direction, when the air sharpens just before a storm or just after a sunrise, you hear it again. Faint, like memory. The groan of wagon wheels. The murmur of hooves. The breath of something old moving through the trees. Someone else is coming, someone new. Someone uncertain. Someone hopeful. Like you were once, like you still are, somewhere deep beneath your boots, because no one ever truly finishes the Oregon Trail, they just begin another one. And now, the trail behind you grows quiet, the dust that clung to your skin finally settles, sifting gently into the earth. Your boots, worn to their soles, are still. The fire burns low, its embers like quiet stars nestled in ash. You are no longer moving forward. No longer bracing for the next climb. No longer flinching at every crack of twig or rustle in the dark. You are here, the air has changed. The wind no longer snaps at your sleeves or howls warnings into your ears. It moves softly now, rustling the tall grass in slow rhythm. The ground beneath your body no longer resists. It holds you. Steady. Solid. Kind. Above you, the sky stretches wide and full. It is endless, but never empty. Stars dot the dark, old and knowing. They do not blink. They do not rush. They keep watch in silence, as they always have. They saw you when you began. They see you now, and they wait, so you wait too. Your breath slows, the muscles that once held tension like rope begin to slacken. Your hands, always curled around tools, reins, weapons, now rest, open and unafraid. The ache in your legs, once sharp and biting, becomes something quieter. Almost tender. A song hummed in your bones. A reminder of the miles you carried yourself. You think of your wagon, tilted and tired. It does not move now. But it holds everything you brought with you. Not just tools. Not just blankets. But memory. Faith. A stubborn belief in forward. You think of the oxen, stretched out in the grass. Still breathing. Still with you, you think of the people. All of them. The ones who arrived. The ones who didn't. Each of them walked this dirt. Saw this moon. Carried their own hope, and here, at last, with the world wrapped in hush and your body wrapped in stillness, you are allowed something rare. You are allowed to rest. Close your eyes, let the trail sleep. You've already come so far, you do not need to go any further, not tonight, just sleep, you are home.